Chapter 895. The real competition was about to begin. That was the thought in everyone's mind. The scene started. Yin Weiyao was still smoking, dressed in his black uniform. He took over Yunhu's place and walked towards the 1v1 seats. The special effects started playing. The two players put on their headphones at the same time. The competition had officially begun. Everyone knew that this was a PK between the two players. The more skilled they were, the longer the battle would take. At this point, no one would say that Yin Weiyao was old and unsuitable for esports. The shoutcasters weren't as confident as when Supreme Alliance had just entered the scene. At this point, everyone finally admitted that Supreme Alliance wasn't weak. But that didn't mean that they would win. Because their opponents weren't simple. The first blood was taken by Lin Chintao's team. But very quickly, Yin Weiyao returned the favor. Every time the two players clashed, the audience couldn't help but take in a deep breath. This was a battle where either one of them would die. They were both considered to be older people in the esports arena. But their drive didn't diminish at all. If it was a newbie, he would have been killed by the uncle. Lin Feng loved to speak the truth. Now, it's time to see who has the more murderous spirit. The two shoutcasters agreed with Lin Feng. Veteran players have their advantages. They have more experience and are familiar with the map. But the downside is that they think too much. After dying once, no one will easily give up a second drop of HP. That's why both Yin Weiyao and the opposing team are holding back. It seems like whoever breaks through their limits has a higher chance of winning. That's right. However, a 1v1 is usually not a good match. No one is willing to go all out. After all, if they fail at the start, it will affect the rest of the battle. That's right, even I was most afraid of being drawn into a 1v1. I can't be reckless, I have to, it's here. The commentator suddenly interrupted his partner's words. He glanced over. Everyone's gaze was on the screen. The shoutcaster's eyes lit up. Snipe in the middle lane. Does Yin Weiyao want to start a fight in the middle lane? As soon as he finished speaking, the two figures clashed again. That kind of fast and beautiful operation presented a smooth scene that was addicting to the eyes. This was the kind of sparks that would only appear between two experts. If you think that heroes just stand there and attack, you are wrong. These two figures were entangled with each other, unleashing all their skills. How could they quickly avoid each other's attacks and then turn around to attack? During this period of time, the two figures didn't even stop, let alone stand. Every time one thought that one of them was about to die, that person's figure would sway, dodge the attack, and then turn around to attack. Both of them were at low HP, so both of them were wary of each other. They were afraid that they would be killed if they were careless. After all, no one wanted to lose a second life. With 3 lives lost, the competition would be over. Who wouldn't want to win? Hence, at this moment, the two of them simultaneously retreated back to the city to heal. The experienced commentator spoke again. If this stalemate isn't broken, the competition will drag on indefinitely. At this point, it all depends on who has more perseverance. That was indeed the case. The audience had never seen such a competition before. Too much time was wasted. 10 minutes followed by another 10 minutes. The 1v1 actually went on for almost an hour, but there wasn't a single sign of change. Another half an hour passed. Both Yin Weiyao and the opposing player held onto the mouse for more than a certain amount of time. Everyone knew that this couldn't go on. The club manager watched the scene. He was already unhappy with the sudden change of players, so when he saw the situation, he reached out his hand and used the one and only authority in the competition. As the supervising coach, he had the authority. But at this point in time, he shouldn't be interrupting the competition. The manager didn't think too much, he was only thinking about how to win. Hence, he didn't even care about Rao Rong's warning gaze. He picked up the microphone and hollered at the competing player, "Watch out, don't get killed again. If you can't win this competition, you will leave with your captain Rao." When Rao Rong pulled the manager's microphone over, he was already done. When the player heard him, he tightened his grip on the mouse, his gaze lowered. It was probably this kind of language that had provoked him. The audience could see that the character in the game was moving faster. At this moment, Supreme Alliance made a call. But this time, the person who gave Yin Weao advice wasn't Chin Mo, but Bojo. As the vice-captain of Supreme Alliance, Bojo had a head of messy silver hair. Her thin lips lifted slightly as she said to Yin Weao, "Uncle, you don't have to think so much, there is no construction without destruction in esports." Hearing this, Yin Weao's fingers paused and he turned around abruptly. When the youngster had found him, her first sentence had been, "Why are you still playing games if you don't shake up the esports world?" Back then, he had come back because of this fearlessness. He had charged forward, not for fame, not for profit, and not even for victory, but to fight an exciting esports battle. Even if no one would remember his name after he lost. He couldn't retreat out of fear of losing. Yin Weao laughed. Previously, he had been sitting in front of the computer in fear of being affected, putting down his cigarette. But now, he held it between his thin lips, moving the mouse as he moved forward. That kind of attitude was the most carefree north of Yin Mountain. He thought that from that moment on, he knew very well why he had returned. It was because of the youngster's charisma. That youngster would never be inflexible. He wasn't young but had an astounding spirit. Even until today. The little captain he knew was still the little captain he had been in the past. He wasn't afraid of anything, he was still handsome. Without destruction, there was no construction. Little captain was right. Yin Weao's fingertips were typing furiously. The shoutcaster couldn't help but freeze when Yin Weao came face to face with his opponent once again. At this moment, with the previous performances, it wasn't expected to be so soon. But this time, it wasn't just a face-to-face, it was a direct confrontation. Whose positioning, whose attack was stronger, whose speed of retreat was faster would determine the outcome of this match. It was another battle between two experts. When both players' health was low, they had to retreat. Just as everyone was calculating who would be the fastest to return to the city, they saw Yin Weao turn to the side. Instead of retreating, he dashed towards his opponent. This action was unintentionally courting death. But was it really courting death? That was the greatest joy of hero. No matter what, one shouldn't expect the outcome. It wasn't just about positioning and hand speed, one had to know how to make use of the terrain. If one had all the conditions, then the most exciting thing was to kill with low HP. The audience watched as north of the Yin Mountain swept past the side and hid in the bushes. He skillfully avoided his opponent's big move before going for another kill. KO. In an instant. The entire stadium erupted in cheers. The support batons were banged loudly. Second life. As long as he took down the opponent's third life. Then the victory would belong to Supreme Alliance. No one understood why Yin Weao's playing style was so different from before. But it was because of the bravery that could be described as flowing water. Soon, the opponent's last defense tower was reached. Yin Weao took down the opponent's capital city. Game over. Supreme Alliance won. The cheers grew even louder. Even the shoutcaster hadn't expected the second half of the match to end so quickly. When he regained his senses, his first reaction was to ask the director to replay the match. "Congratulations to Supreme Alliance," the shoutcaster said sincerely, his voice filled with disbelief. Lin Chintao couldn't understand why Yin Weao's playing style had changed so suddenly. He was no longer carefree, as though he wasn't afraid of winning or losing. How did this happen? It would be a lie if he said he wasn't disappointed. But Rao Rong knew he couldn't let the results affect him. His voice was calm. The live conversation just now. The live conversation just now. Lin Chintao glanced over at Supreme Alliance, his eyes widening. Captain, do you mean that north of the Yi mountain changed so drastically because of what Spade Z said to him? Rao Rong remained silent, clearly a stranger. Lin Chintao grabbed his hair. F***ck, what exactly did Spade Z say to north of the Yi mountain? Why is he so stubborn? Bo Jiu didn't say much, just 4 words. Without destruction, there would be no construction. It was very suitable for Yin Weiyao at this stage. And why did Yin Weiyao dare to charge forward? It was because he knew even if he lost, his team members would also win it back. Because in a 2v2, the 2 people who were about to go on stage were the ones who could give people a sense of support. On the other hand, Lin Chintao's team wasn't in a good mood. Li Nuo seized the opportunity, the disdain in his eyes obvious. You bragged so well just now, saying I wasn't suitable for a 1v1. In the end, you still lost. Just you wait, I will definitely tell my father about today's incident and say that you guys suppressed me. Up to you. At this moment, Lin Chintao didn't want to waste any more time with him, his face cold. After today, I won't be staying in this team anymore, the same goes for the others. Hence, you better behave, we don't have time for you. Lin Chintao was asking himself the same question in his mind. How strong was that youngster? They only knew that Spade Z was good at assassins and was adept at getting the first kill. But they never knew. Other than that, there were others. A call was enough to wake north of the Yin mountain up. Really, Lin Chintao couldn't describe it. He walked over and patted the shoulder of the player who had just finished the match. That player had been hanging his head ever since he left the arena, and this time was no exception. However, the strands of hair in front of his forehead fell down. That person's fingers moved, and the expression on his face couldn't be seen clearly. After playing in the pro league for so long, some things have probably been implanted into my bones. For example, I'm very afraid of losing. Because of this fear, I don't even dare to do the bare minimum. I'm the one who didn't have enough courage. Rao Rong sat beside him. You played well, even though you lost. With that, the player's back trembled. Yes, no one could deny that it had been an exciting match. The time record had exceeded any other match since the start of the competition. If they weren't equally skilled, such a number wouldn't have been recorded. The applause from the crowd wasn't just for Yin Weiyao, but for the player as well. Regardless of the team's atmosphere, the competition would still continue. The shoutcaster started to grab everyone's attention. What an exciting 1v1. Next up is the 2v2. Let's take a look at the players from both teams. Even though the list of participants had already been prepared, who would be competing in what, whether it would be a team battle or something like that, would only be announced before the match started. Even the commentator's name had to be displayed on the big screen. Alright, let's take a look. The players are Lin Chintao and Rao Rong. The shoutcaster's eyes widened when he saw the 2 names. Even he hadn't expected the 2 of them to be in the 2v2. Are they up to something? F***ck, are my eyes playing tricks on me? Almighty Lin and Almighty Rao are out now, and they are even playing doubles. I want to know who Supreme Alliance is sending. It should be the Fengyun duo, right? After all, they have high chemistry. Even though Shui Yaoyao and Feng Shang have good teamwork, they are nothing compared to Almighty Rao. I think it should be the Fengyun duo too. After all, there are only 4 Supreme Alliance members who have played doubles before. The other 2 are newbies, so it isn't suitable today. The 2 names had appeared at an inappropriate time. The beautiful MC was shocked. She started to press the button on the screen on the left. After seeing the roster, I think everyone is most concerned about the same thing as me. Which two names are from Supreme Alliance? Let's take a look at the screen. The moment the MC finished her sentence, on the huge screen hanging in the air, two names froze with a swoosh. Spade Z, Chin Mo. Just 6 words, written in regular script. It was extremely domineering. All of a sudden, screams filled the air, almost lifting the roof of the entire venue. Spade Z and Chin Mo. Am I seeing things? They are actually on the doubles roster. Almighty Chin and Big Spade have never played doubles before. It's either a 1v1 or a team battle. Doubles. Gosh. I don't know why, but I'm looking forward to it. I feel like this is going to be a sweet competition. My heart aches for Almighty Lin for 3 seconds, F***CK, this is the first time. My Almighty Chin is playing doubles for the first time. In my life, I have never played doubles with anyone. This is my principle. Some people especially wanted to tell this girl that many of Almighty Chin's principles were no longer absolute after meeting Big Spade. This made Almighty Chin's entire being come alive. Doubles. What did that mean? Chapter 896. The shoutcasters were stirred up by the atmosphere in the stadium, and their voices carried an unavoidable excitement. Looks like both teams are going all out. A double, 4 aces. I thought they would only appear in the team battle, but from the looks of it, no one would have expected Chin Mo's move. The other shoutcaster was equally shocked. From a certain perspective, this is probably the first time Chin Mo has participated in a doubles match. In the past, he has participated in doubles matches with others watching while he killed 2 players alone. Yeah, Chin Mo is too arrogant, but no one can match his arrogance. How gentle do you think Spade Z's playing style is? I've seen the airport. Seriously, they really like to kill. These two are playing doubles. 2 aspects. I'll talk about the good side first. Both of them are first clear kings. Their hand speed and positioning are impeccable. Also, both of them are so domineering. It's not necessarily a good thing to put them in a duo. Between the two of them, one of them has to hold back a little. Rao Rong and Lin Chintao are in the same situation. It's not the same. Lin Chintao's style isn't like Spade Z's, he knows how to work together. Hence, we'll have to see which characters are chosen. Usually, in a doubles match, it's best if the characters can work together. This shouldn't be a problem for Supreme Alliance. After all, Chin Mo and Spade Z are all-rounders. I'm just worried that they won't play according to the rules, their playstyle. The commentator had not finished his sentence. The two of them were already seated in front of the computer. They clicked the mouse at the same time and entered the game, choosing the character they wanted to control. The character's stats appeared. The commentator immediately swallowed his words. This. Do I still play or not? I've already guessed correctly. Even if I don't play by the rules, I can't be this unconventional. 2 assassins. How could they cooperate? Damn. Am I seeing things? Almighty Chin must be joking, right? Almighty Chin, you really won't consider changing to someone else? Can't Big Spade play with characters with other attributes? It's so tough, go all out. That's not it, Big Spade switched to an assassin this time. With a lifesteal, his HP wouldn't be so low. But Big Spade's forte is camouflage and invisibility. No matter what, it doesn't seem right for 2 assassins to fight like this. I can't understand this combination anymore. Big Rao's team has a good combination. The assassin has tanky equipment, and there's also a titan. They have crowd control and damage output. Most importantly, if they don't have any squishy skin, the assassin won't be able to cut through them even if he wants to. It was a game that high-level players could understand. Rao Rong and Lin Chintao are the nemesis of Spade Z and Qin Mo, especially Spade Z. Everyone knows that Spade Z's fast hand speed is his specialty, but when it comes to magical flesh, no matter how fast he is, he still has to consider if he can rush over. This is really a match where no one can predict the outcome. The other shoutcaster was puzzled. Why don't Spade Z play a Fatten as well? In the end, his playstyle is too domineering. Or maybe he came from the wilderness area and likes this kind of rhythm. The shoutcaster shook his head. Spade Z probably isn't used to the change to a professional player. Usually, in such a situation, there would definitely be someone in the team who would switch to a more suitable combination. But regardless of the voices around them. Chapter 897. Similarly, Qin Mo didn't move either. It was no wonder Feng Yi had said they looked alike. All of them were sitting there steadily, without any intention of changing their positions. Any one of them would be able to kill anyone with their looks alone. But their skills were excellent. Especially with a lollipop in his mouth, he looked like a handsome hooligan ready for a gang fight. When Lin Chintao saw such an opponent, he really wanted to pull little Spade over and shake her. The four of them had all participated in the same variety show, so they could be considered old acquaintances to a certain extent. Moreover, the Alliance's WeChat group would chat occasionally. From a certain perspective, they were both friends and foes. But when the four of them faced each other, it had always been an unpredictable match. Qin Mo and Spade Z were playing a double. Everyone craned their necks to watch. They were afraid they would miss something exciting. Swoosh! As the game's music blared, the characters that the four of them were controlling appeared on the big screen at the same time. The game had officially begun. All of the fans tightened their grip on the support sticks in their hands, raised their eyes at the same time, and looked in the same direction. In that moment, the crowd was silent, their attention unprecedented. No one knew what kind of visual feast they would be witnessing. Both teams were too strong. The fans were silent, but Lin Chintao couldn't take it anymore. The moment he entered the game, he turned on the public speaker. Little Spade, what's the meaning of both of you playing assassins? And don't you have a toothache from eating lollipops? More importantly, I'm warning you, don't come to our side to fight. If you want to fight, fight your own team. Tell me, do you dare to fight me head-on? As he spoke, Lin Chintao's hands didn't slow down at all. The fans shrugged. He's at it again. This was Lin Chintao's style, he would start with nonsense and end with a taunt. But everyone assumed Big Spade wouldn't bother with him. After all, everyone knew how chatty Lin Chintao was. If you bothered with him, he would definitely ramble on from the start to the end. Unexpectedly, the youngster turned on the public speaker, her lazy voice drifting out. Who wants to fight you head-on, Brother Mo, and I will take the path of a bookworm. You. A top student. Lin Chintao felt that everyone in the world could become a top student. A certain someone looked like a slacker and didn't seem like one. What's wrong with me being a top student? She moved the mouse slightly, her left hand switching between light clicks. The clicking sounds were so fast that it was unbelievable. She still had the time to deal with her opponent's nonsense. As long as it was a battle between experts, they wouldn't take the normal route. However, the shoutcasters could not understand this time. Bo Jiao had always been a player that farmed beasts. Why was she heading straight for the middle lane this time? The speed at which she wiped out the troops was shocking. Rao Rong narrowed his eyes. As a Fatten, he definitely wouldn't allow Spade Z to enter the tower. He wanted to fight him, but his opponent had no intention of fighting him. He turned around and jumped into the jungle. Rao Rong wouldn't follow them easily. It was simple. Qin Mo might be in the jungle on that side. One of the assassins appeared and lured the sorcerer into the wilderness, while the other assassin appeared to block the sorcerer with his ultimate skill. This is not unheard of. The calmer it was in the game, the more it meant that something was up. From the audience's point of view, they had a panoramic view of the entire map. Hence, they were clear of everyone's location, including the attack signal that Qin Mo had sent out at the red bushes. Some shook their heads. Supreme Alliance's move is useless against Almighty Rao. I think Spade Z should change his strategy since he is facing Almighty Rao. He wouldn't fall for such a trick. That's true. In terms of experience, Almighty Rao isn't any lesser than Spade Z. There isn't much hope in tricking Almighty Rao. Just as they were discussing, the shoutcaster suddenly spoke up. The shoutcaster suddenly said, I don't think he's trying to attract people. He isn't luring anyone. Another commentator pointed to the red dot on the map. Look at Qin Mo's position, this is obviously a setup, but Rao Rong saw through it. The shoutcaster took a look at the replay. That's not right. If Spade Z was trying to lure someone, he would have stopped for a while to make it easier for them to catch up. That way, the two of them would be able to surround each other and not give each other a chance to escape. But Spade Z didn't stop at all. Judging from his speed, Spade Z shouldn't be trying to lure someone. Otherwise, why wouldn't Spade Z stop and head straight for Qin Mo? The other shoutcaster immediately switched to the screen, his eyes widening. He isn't luring anyone, he's going for the red beasts. What do you mean? This time, the audience was confused. The shoutcaster immediately organized his thoughts. Let's take a look at Qin Mo's positioning. He first went for the blue beasts and then retreated to get the red beasts. The red beasts were clearly taken down by Qin Mo a second ago, but what is everyone looking at? Qin Mo sent out a signal but he didn't move. Hence, his attack isn't to encircle anyone but for Spade Z to collect the red beasts. The audience wouldn't have expected such a ploy. What made them speechless was, it wasn't just the red beasts, even the other beasts in the wilderness were killed in one hit by Spade Z after Qin Mo was almost done leading the troops. The CP fans couldn't help but cover their faces with their hands. You can't be so doting, letting his wife kill all the beasts, it's so cute. Even though the CP fans' metaphor wasn't very appropriate, it was indeed the case. The two shoutcasters were a little confused, they didn't know how to explain the current situation. Does Qin Mo mean that Spade Z is the leader of this match and he's the support? Otherwise, how could he fight like this? In that instant, the eyes of those who understood what was going on would tremble. That included Yin Weiyao. He had been holding a cigarette in his mouth, but when he saw this, the ash fell to the ground. At that moment, he sincerely admired the person who had won the Best Esports Player award at such a young age. Because no captain would be willing to be someone's support. Moreover, he wasn't just anyone, he was the strongest hero, Qin Mo. Or, in his mind, Spade Z was already on par with him. Isn't this too risky? The shoutcaster understood Qin Mo's intentions. But even if Spade Z was the new player king, they had Rao Rong and Lin Chintao on their side. After all, no matter how good Spade Z was, he was still a newbie. Besides, had Qin Mo forgotten? They were playing as an assassin. Right at this moment, the youngster moved again. Her movements were swift, especially her fingers, which were twice as fast as before. F***CK, what kind of hand speed is that? He's leaping from the bushes in the wilderness, so impressive. Is he going to snatch their beasts again? Isn't that a little unrealistic? Lin Chintao wouldn't allow Spade Z to act recklessly. Indeed, he wouldn't because Lin Chintao was already waiting at his red beasts, waiting to catch him. But Spade Z didn't go. Instead, he ran into the middle of the two defense towers, took out a wave of troops, and headed straight back. If one had to describe Spade Z's current playstyle, she would go wherever there was money. He was so arrogant that he went to the middle of the two defense towers to cut down the troops. Lin Chintao gritted his teeth. "Little Spade, do you really think we don't have anyone on our side?" With that, Lin Chintao charged over. Lin Chintao was Lin Chintao after all. He was fast, almost catching up to Bojo. Rao Rong followed suit. Rao Rong was impressive because of his ability to judge. For example, right now, he seemed to be able to predict where Spade Z would go, blocking in front of her. With troops chasing behind and Faden in front, if he didn't think of something, he would definitely be surrounded. It wouldn't matter how fast Spade Z's hands were. More importantly, the audience had a bird's eye view. They could clearly see everyone's position on the map. Chin Mo wasn't nearby. Would Big Spade still be alive? The hearts of the fans were squeezed tightly at that moment. Rao Rong narrowed his eyes, his fingers moving swiftly. The first wave of damage landed on Bojo. The damage came with a speed reduction effect. Spade Z's speed had obviously slowed down. As long as Lin Chintao closed in with a big move, Spade Z would definitely die. There was no way to escape from Spade Z's position since there was a wall on his right. Some couldn't bear to watch any longer. They tilted their heads. The shoutcaster frowned. "I'm afraid Lin Chintao's team is going to take that drop of blood." Before he could finish his sentence, the youngster's right hand moved in a snake-like motion, her left hand tapping at an astonishing speed. The three movements were seamless as she leaped to the right, passing through the wall and into the tower. With a second jump, she escaped the defense tower's attack, successfully escaping the encirclement. Even though she had lost half of her HP, it didn't affect her. The audience simply could not believe what they were seeing. It was because they couldn't imagine it. There was actually someone who used such a method to escape. Even in such a situation, someone was still able to maintain a clear mind and calculate the loss of HP. Perhaps the audience didn't feel much about it. But the two shoutcasters were stunned. It was obvious that jumping under the defense tower would allow her to escape the encirclement and save her life even though she would be attacked. But the most important thing was, who could be so clear-headed and calm when facing the encirclement of two great experts? Spade Z. This youngster, he was terrifying. F***ck, you actually went through the wall, aren't you despicable? Lin Chintao was filled with regret. How could he have forgotten that little Spade had switched to an assassin? Even though the assassin didn't have an invisibility function, she could still go through walls. Don't go through if you dare. Chapter 898. With that, Bojo paused, standing at the base of her defense tower. She swept a wave of troops arrogantly before returning to the city to heal herself. F***ck. Lin Chintao wanted to fight back. This is the first time I'm seeing someone more shameless than me. Bojo replied, "Don't worship me. Worship your head." Lin Chintao swept the tower. The audience could feel his resentment through the screen. The shoutcasters weren't in a good position. After all, the National League didn't seem like a proper competition with both of them. One of the shoutcasters coughed. Let's take a look at the replay." They definitely had to watch the replay. After all, the young man's dangerous jump could be said to be included in the game's textbooks. But that wasn't what caught Rao Rong's attention. At this moment, he seemed to have realized something, turning abruptly. Wilderness. Lin Chintao moved his fingers, switching the map. That was when he realized that the blue beasts that had appeared were gone. He didn't have to think to know who had stolen their beasts. There were only 4 of them in the game. All 3 of them had been there. Only Qin Mo. F***ck, didn't you say you wouldn't steal beasts from our side? You guys are too shameless. Lin Chintao decided to take revenge. He turned and swept past Supreme Alliance's first red zone, wiping out all the beasts that needed to be killed. Bo Jiu was starting to feel frustrated. Aren't you being immoral? Leave a red for me. Your captain stole our beasts and you want me to leave a red for you. Lin Chintao was infuriated. Where's your professionalism? Bo Jiu swept past a wave of troops. With Rao Rong around, it wasn't easy for her to leave the tower to fight with Lin Chintao. But similarly, because of Qin Mo, Lin Chintao only dared to steal one wave of beasts. Any more and Qin Mo would appear. At the end of the day, Qin Mo was the most shameless. Without a word, he had stolen 2 beasts from their side. With that in mind, Lin Chintao added, "Little spade, look at you, when you were surrounded by my captain and me, he didn't even care about you. He just came to my house to steal my kill. If I were you, I would jump ship right now. Go to another team and follow your captain. I don't feel safe at all." Just as he finished speaking, a voice suddenly rang out. Suddenly, a silhouette appeared on his left and swept past him. His ultimate skill locked onto him, and he lost 30% of his health. The main thing was that when he counterattacked, the figure had already moved to the other side. Needless to say, everyone knew it was Qin Mo. Lin Chintao had said those words to lure Qin Mo out. Now that he saw someone, he quickly went up to them. Rao Rong was in the bushes in front of them. Not only did he lose a third of his HP, but he was also immobilized on the spot. Lin Chintao saw that the time was right. With a close combat attack, Qin Mo's HP dropped to less than half. Qin Mo's sneak attack isn't good. Sometimes, Lin Chintao's nonsense isn't useless. Rao Rong really can't be underestimated. Just now, if it wasn't for Rao Rong, Spade Z would have snatched the red and wouldn't have been chased by the opponent. Chapter 899. On the screen, the scene of 2 people chasing after one person was very shocking. The audience watched as Qin Mo's HP dropped to a critical level, as though he would be killed in the next second. Qin Mo wouldn't be able to escape even if Lin Chintao tried to kill him under the city defense tower. But at that moment, Qin Mo released a skill, purifying Rao Rong's control. The long fingers on his right hand moved swiftly, releasing the second skill, forming a circular sword formation that nullified the damage. With a wave of his long sword, his body flashed and he headed towards the wilderness, leaving behind a silver afterimage. It was a show-off. Seeing this scene, the commentator could not help but shout, "Beautiful." Lin Chintao had already used his ultimate move when he was about to attack. There was no way he could catch up now. He could only watch as Qin Mo returned to the city. Moreover, he had lost half of his HP at the bottom of the tower. No matter how unwilling they were, they could only retreat. However, a figure leapt out from the bushes and instantly appeared in front of him, unleashing the most explosive attack. Lin Chintao's hand, which was holding the mouse, took a step back, knocking the microphone beside him. For such a commotion. Everyone felt as if their throats were being choked. Not for anything else, but for the devilish smile on the silver-haired youngster's face as he moved the mouse. It was a murderous aura. That figure flew with the wind, his target was Lin Chintao. Lin Chintao gritted his teeth and used his skills, but he still couldn't escape the young man's hunting range. But Rao Rong was Rao Rong after all. The moment Qin Mo dodged, he seemed to have realized something. He charged into the wilderness and stood in front of Lin Chintao, using his ultimate skill to give Lin Chintao time to escape. Immediately afterward, he activated Swift Run and returned to the defense tower. This set of attacks was completed. Everyone could feel Rao Rong's ability as the best team controller. Seems like it won't work. The shoutcaster chuckled. Spade Z's pursuit isn't effective against Rao Rong. That's true. Another shoutcaster sighed. But this is a battle between masters. I really didn't expect Spade Z to come over from that place. If I wasn't watching from God's perspective, I would have thought that Qin Mo and Spade Z had discussed something beforehand. But now, it seems like the two of them are thinking the same thing. They're on the same side, and it's really scary when used properly. Lin Chintao couldn't hear what was going on outside. Every contestant had to ensure that they could compete in peace. Every contestant had to wear a soundproof earpiece. When he returned to the city, he could feel his palms sweating. Because Lin Chintao knew how shocking it had been. On the map, Spade Z's figure disappeared again. Qin Mo came out of the city center and headed straight for the jungle on the top lane. It seemed like he was going to kill some blue beasts. This time, Lin Chintao didn't rush forward. Instead, he darted through the bushes and sent a signal to Rao Rong. At this moment, Rao Rong had already returned to the middle lane. After leading the troops, he successfully took down one of the defense towers. The two of them attacked Qin Mo from the left and right. Lin Chintao only had one thought. Even if he couldn't take down Qin Mo's head, he could steal his beasts so he wouldn't be able to grow stronger. Everyone knew that once Qin Mo got up, with his inhuman skills, no one would be able to control him. Even Rao Rong couldn't guarantee that he wouldn't be able to stop Qin Mo's momentum. 3,000 knife cutting. Killing within 10 miles, leaving no one behind. It wasn't just a casual statement. Hence, the best way to deal with Qin Mo was to kill all the beasts he needed. Lin Chintao grasped the opportunity to jump, using his jungling skills to steal his opponent's blue beast. Lin Chintao grasped the opportunity and jumped, using his jungling skills to steal the opponent's blue monster. Qin Mo moved away, dodging the attack and reducing most of the damage. With Rao Rong's precise skills, Qin Mo dodged and avoided the attack, reducing the damage. But even so, the beasts he needed were gone. With Rao Rong's precise skills, he stood in between the two towers, within the range of the defense tower's attack. Against such a level of control, an assassin with poor control would easily be killed on the spot. That was Rao Rong's true terror. Even an expert like Qin Mo had lost half of his HP. Lin Chintao also displayed his perfect coordination. Before Qin Mo, he reached the gap between the last crystal tower and used his big move to counterattack. Just a little more and she would have killed Qin Mo, who was walking back. If Qin Mo hadn't put up a protective barrier, he would have been killed. His first HP would have been taken. Rao Rong and Lin Chintao's coordination is perfect. The shoutcaster exclaimed. Especially Lin Chintao's last move. It's a pity this game is all about luck. Since he returned to the city with low HP, it seems like Supreme Alliance is being suppressed. That isn't all, everyone knows that Qin Mo needs blue beasts in the jungle to grow stronger. Without blue beasts, his big move is useless. A useless hero, regardless of how skilled his player is, won't be able to use the 3,000 knife cutting. Based on the current situation, Supreme Alliance isn't in a good spot. After the fans listened to such an explanation, every one of them seemed to be worried. Almighty Qin, who had been defeated by the 3,000 knife cutting, felt so aggrieved. It seems like Rao Rong is going to lead the tempo. Rao Rong's control is indeed a tough obstacle to overcome. If they don't break through Rao Rong's trap, they will continue to lead the tempo. First, they suppressed Spade Z's hand speed and maneuvers. Now, they cut off Qin Mo's blue beasts. Only Rao Rong can execute such a plan. But come to think of it, even if Supreme Alliance loses this match, there's still the next team battle. That might be the case, but think about it, when has Qin Mo ever lost? Qin Mo hasn't lost because ever since that year, he hasn't met an expert like Xiangnan or a top player like Rao Rong. In reality, the problem is that when he meets an expert, he might not be able to unleash his full potential. Are you saying that Qin Mo's ability has weakened? You saw the chase just now. Be it you or me, the Qin Mo in everyone's memory can perform in a 1v5. If he hadn't activated his defensive skill, Lin Chintao would have taken the first HP. This is the second time he has escaped from the jaws of a tiger. Don't you think it's dangerous? The more Lin Feng listened, the more he felt that the shoutcaster hadn't played for a long time and only knew how to spout nonsense. He had escaped from the jaws of a tiger twice. Each time, he had been able to return to the city accurately, bringing along another wave of troops. Was his ability weakened? It was obvious that he had other ideas. Their captain had never played games in a straight line of thought. Even though Lin Feng wasn't sure why his captain hadn't displayed his abilities yet. But he was certain that since his captain wasn't hiding in the map like before, he wasn't discovered. That meant he had other plans. As for what that plan was, with Lin Feng's naive brain, it wasn't easy to figure it out. But Yin Wuyao, who was experienced, was different. He seemed to have thought of something. He suddenly stood up and said only one word, dragon. Dragon. Before the audience could react to Yin Wuyao's words, a line of words appeared on the huge screen in the middle. A line of words appeared on the big screen hanging in the middle. The Tyrant King has been killed by Spade Z. The Tyrant King was an extreme boss. The team that killed it would be rewarded with double the experience. But he killed the little dragon so early. It's still the same. I'm impressed by Big Spade when it comes to killing wild beasts and bosses. As someone who often gets killed after killing dragons, I really want to know how Spade Z did it. How did he kill the dragon single-handedly? Isn't he still in the early stages? No. Yin Wuyao listened to the comments around him, his voice heavy. It isn't the early stages for the little captain and captain. The reason why Yin Wuyao would say such a thing was because he had been observing the entire time. Ever since the start of the game, wherever there was money, there would be the youngster. Many people were wrong. The jumping back and forth wasn't for the first HP. It was for the economy. Regardless of the game, the more gold coins one obtained, the stronger one's abilities would be. Besides, equipment could only be obtained with gold coins. The character that the little captain was controlling had the ability to suck blood, so he could be used as a titan. This solved the shoutcaster's problem of the character's attributes being suppressed. Besides, the little captain had already taken down the dragon, so he didn't have to be afraid of the titan. The moment Bojiu killed the hidden boss, the Tyrant King, the shoutcaster was suddenly enlightened. The shoutcasters seemed to have realized something as well. They immediately got someone to bring up the financial comparison of the 4 contestants so far. That was when they realized that Spade Z's gold coins were in first place, followed by Qin Mo. Which meant that Rao Rong's team seemed to have the upper hand, but that wasn't the case. The two shoutcasters glanced at each other, seeing the same shock in each other's eyes. There's the most important point. Yin Wuyao held a cigarette between his fingers. He was indeed an old man, even his stance was typical of his generation. Ever since the start of the game, the little captain and the captain have never stood together, which means that they have been fighting 1 against 2. His last sentence, 1 against 2, was like a bolt of lightning, jolting everyone awake. If the shoutcaster had only been shocked. But now, they were completely shaken. Because Yin Wuyao was right. Ever since the start of the game, both Qin Mo and Spade Z had been able to control the other two, gaining the time difference to allow the other to do what he wanted. For example, Qin Mo had wiped out the other party's jungle. For example, this time, Spade Z had killed the Tyrant King. If all of this was planned, then the two of them are really terrifying, the commentator murmured in disbelief. They didn't communicate at all, did they? Other than Lin Chintao's nonsense, Spade Z. Furthermore, those words sounded rather thick-skinned. How could they have thought of the same thing? There's no need to communicate in front of a true expert. Yin Weiyao held the cigarette in his mouth, looking slightly mischievous. Not to mention the two of them. The two of them. Every single one of them was able to set the tempo of the entire game. Even when they were fighting 1 against 5, they would be able to kill one of them and escape successfully. How could they only act on the surface when they were doing things? But how much trust did they have to use such a strategy? Spade Z's confidence in Qin Mo was understandable. Did Qin Mo have the same confidence in Spade Z? Did he think that even if the youngster was facing 2 people, he wouldn't be destroyed? It had to be said that such a thought was too presumptuous. However, they had really presented such a method to the public. Even if their fighting style was too domineering and they weren't convinced, so what if they wanted to develop independently? It was precisely because of their domineering nature that the cooperation between the powerhouses was different from the others. If Qin Mo had been fighting 1 against 2, the shoutcaster chuckled bitterly. I wouldn't have dared to imagine what it would be like if the 2 of them worked together. At this moment, no one dared to say that it was inappropriate for the 2 of them to choose assassins at the same time. Even though their formation wasn't compatible, it gave off an inconceivable feeling. Even Lin Chintao didn't waste any more time, focusing on the map. He knew it wasn't a suitable time to capture Spade Z because it would be difficult. Even if he managed to capture him, he would be able to defeat Spade Z in a one-on-one duel because of the disparity in their finances and equipment. But if their captain had followed behind him, he would have been able to kill Little Spade. Even if Little Spade's maneuvering was incredible, he would be able to do it as long as he was given an opening. But their captain had chosen Fa Tan. Under normal circumstances, Spade Z would have escaped before their captain had arrived. Lin Chintao hadn't expected their formation to suppress their opponent. At the end, it would reveal their weakness. They weren't as agile as their opponent. In other words, they couldn't kill as fast as the enemy, and they couldn't run as fast as the enemy. But Lin Chintao hadn't expected this. Qin Mo had actually given up on the blue beasts in order to protect Little Spade. Unless... Lin Chintao paused. The main attacker wasn't him, but Little Spade. Rao Rong had figured it out long before Lin Chintao could. But, was this youngster really that good? Was Qin Mo willing to assist him? That was Qin Mo. However, the silver-haired youngster in front of the computer wasn't affected by the gazes, her side profile as handsome as ever. After returning to the city, her fingers moved, flicking her black wrist guard. Her lips lifted, her handsomeness numbed their hearts. Chapter 900. Just a few words. It was like a torch, igniting everyone's gaze. For some reason, it made one's blood boil inexplicably. Just because of the youngster's words. Some of them couldn't help but clench their fists tightly. They knew that the FC King of Zone C that they were familiar with was finally returning to his original form. It's coming. Yin Weiyao said. He placed his hands down, his eyes on the screen. On the map, Qin Mo and Bo Jiao were like 2 arrows that had left the bow, skimming across the wilderness. They were shoulder to shoulder, as they skimmed across the grass. They were so fast they brought up a gust of wind, neither of them falling behind the other. That kind of sharpness. Be it Qin Mo or Bo Jiao, their slender fingers moved extremely quickly. Because of the rapid tapping, in that instant, there was an afterimage that shouldn't have appeared. With Qin Mo's speed and precise positioning, the moment they left the city walls, it was as though they had disappeared from the map. That was the reason why it was so effective. It was because he was so familiar with the map. He was so familiar with every inch of grass that he could accurately calculate the distance between them. This was the reason why people said that Qin Mo was invincible once he got up. Just his memory alone was enough to leave most people in the dust. Coupled with his hand speed and maneuvering, it would really make people tremble in fear. But now, Supreme Alliance had another fearsome person, Spade Z. Even Lin Chintao didn't dare to say he was alone with the youngster. After all, at this point, the other party's financial value was already double his. Hence, even if they saw Spade Z's silhouette, they wouldn't act rashly. From a certain perspective, Rao Rong was very smart. At this point, the battle in the wilderness was obviously disadvantageous to them. The other party had 2 assassins, such a formation was completely jungle type. They moved quickly and were good at hiding. Hence, there was a saying that most hero players knew. If you weren't confident in your skills, don't chase after the assassin. Unless you could control the stun from afar. But there was another point that they had to be wary of. In the hero game, there were many players who chased after the assassin and tank, especially in the wilderness. It was very likely that it was originally an ambush. Even if Spade Z was the only one on the map, there was no guarantee that Qin Mo wasn't there. The last 2 times, they had been solo. This time, they should be together. Rao Rong moved his fingers, taking a step back. His attack landed on the attacking troops. This was a signal. When Lin Chintao saw it, he wouldn't fight as recklessly as before. Because he knew very well that there was no captain. Once he went out, it would be very difficult for him to come back alive. What's more, it wasn't a good time to fight head-on. Rao Rong and Lin Chintao's tactics have changed. Usually, at this time, the commentator would come out and give a few words. Another added, "It's not surprising, the difference in equipment is too huge." Rao Rong and Lin Chintao should have spent some money and taken advantage of the minions. That way, they won't be so passive in the team battle. Everyone watched as Qin Mo and Spade Z went out together. It was a perfect ambush. If Lin Chintao appeared now, the first blood would definitely be taken. But this was the National League after all. Both Lin Chintao and Rao Rong weren't weak in terms of maneuvering and thinking. If it had been anyone else, Bo Jiao and Qin Mo would have already started killing. Because of their opponent's strength, they had used such a method to break Rao Rong's control. It seems like Supreme Alliance isn't as invincible as we imagined. But was that really the case? Very quickly, the shoutcaster realized his mistake. In the wilderness, Bo Jiao and Qin Mo had worked together to wipe out the other party's wilderness. Especially when they were fighting the blue beasts, Bo Jiao had raised her gun first, and after hitting the blue beasts, she had taken a step back, helping Qin Mo to kill all the blue beasts. The shoutcaster was stunned. Spade Z and Qin Mo are certain that the opponent wouldn't come to their wilderness. Is that why they are using such a method? They didn't seem to care if they were in their wilderness or the opponent's, or if there was any danger. It seemed as though none of these factors were within Qin Mo and Spade Z's consideration. Previously, the shoutcaster had been praising Lin Chintao's strategy. They had wiped out the beasts in Supreme Alliance's wilderness, suppressing Qin Mo from the roots. But from the looks of it, that strategy was useless against Qin Mo and Spade Z's official collaboration. Even if they didn't have the beasts, there were still some here. They could just snatch them back. Qin Mo and Spade Z were completely different from Lin Chintao. Their combined attack power was enough to kill the beasts in an instant. Spade Z didn't forget to lift his gun after wiping out the wilderness. He leaped over the wall, wiping out a line of soldiers. Then he went back to the wilderness, joining Qin Mo's attack. What are Spade Z and Qin Mo trying to do? The shoutcaster's fingers twitched when he saw the 2 of them heading towards the top lane. The director changed the angle, zooming in on the top lane. The audience watched as Qin Mo charged into the tower with a sword formation. He didn't care if he would be attacked by the defense tower if he started fighting under it. Without any hesitation, he headed straight for Lin Chintao. Amidst the silver light, Lin Chintao lost a third of his HP. His speed was also reduced by half a second. But it was this half a second gap. The audience watched as another figure leaped into the air with a long gun in hand. With a sweep, he lifted Lin Chintao, who had already been slowed down. His speed was incredible. Especially in that instant, the audience could only see the silver light from the long gun and silver knife. The silver-haired youngster sat in front of the computer, her hands hidden. The clacking of the keyboard sounded like the most exciting part of a piano piece. At this moment, the audience couldn't read the youngster's expression. Even in front of the camera, the youngster's side profile was covered by his messy silver hair, revealing only his slightly upturned lips. With traces of nefarious energy, he swept out with another big move. This time, Lin Chintao was really hurt. First, Qin Mo's big move had shaved off a third of his HP. Now, he was hit twice by Spade Z. His HP dropped to a small amount in an instant. In that instant, there was only one phrase in everyone's mind: tower kill. While the troops were still there, Qin Mo used his sword formation to stun Lin Chintao. Then, Spade Z used his long gun to sweep the tower, using a critical strike. There was no gap in between. The two shoutcasters' eyes were glued to the screen. While their eyes were filled with shock, the audience exploded. F***CK. Spade Z's move is so cool. Little Spade and Almighty Qin didn't even communicate, but they were able to coordinate so well. That's scary. It is indeed frightening. The moment Qin Mo came out, the opponent's Spade jumped in and used every critical hit on the blade. I wouldn't believe it if they said they didn't coordinate beforehand. That's because it's really too difficult to achieve this kind of cooperation. But more importantly, this is a tower fight. As long as Lin Chintao survives, everything will be in vain. It doesn't matter how well Spade Z and Qin Mo cooperated. The audience was right. Lin Chintao gritted his teeth, taking a step back before using his big move. If they weren't under the defense tower, Lin Chintao would have been killed instantly. He wouldn't have had the chance to use his big move. But under the defense tower, he had a chance of survival. All assassins had low HP, so they were all in the vulnerable range. Once the burst was used, there was no need to stay under the defense tower. At this moment, Lin Chintao used his big move. The health points of those who entered the tower would rapidly decrease, and they might even be killed by the heroes below the tower. Lin Chintao wasn't just any other player. He knew he couldn't run at this moment, not even thinking about it. The moment he hesitated, he would miss the opportunity and be killed instantly by the enemy's tower kill. If it had been any other player, their first reaction would have been to run. But Lin Chintao was Lin Chintao, an assassin himself. He knew how to deal with such a troublesome situation. Even though he was low on HP, his gaze was resolute. With a big move, Spade Z's HP fell. That was the end of the cool tower kill. There was another problem. Lin Chintao was at the bottom of the defense tower. He could use the defense tower's attack power to counterattack. But it was one thing for Lin Chintao to be skilled, but Bo Jiao wasn't. Just as Lin Chintao was about to use his second move, Bo Jiao swung her long spear, leaping out of the defense tower. She changed her angle and led the troops to attack the tower. That was too fast, too swift. It wasn't easy for Lin Chintao to take the first kill. That wasn't all, the youngster's entire body exuded an indescribable pressure. Lin Chintao understood instantly. He wouldn't be able to defend the defense tower. Besides, he was low on HP. It wasn't safe for him to return to the city. Both Qin Mo and Spade Z had crossed the defense tower. From the looks of it, there might be a second attempt. Hence, he had to run back. It might have taken a long time to describe, but in reality, it had only been 10 seconds since Qin Mo had cut in. Everything happened too quickly. Amidst the sparks, Lin Chintao started to retreat with his HP low. The shoutcaster laughed. It isn't that easy, Qin Mo and Spade Z's teamwork doesn't seem to be enough to cross the defense tower. However, before he could finish his sentence, a silver-white clothed figure appeared on the screen, as if he had been waiting between the two towers. He dashed towards Lin Chintao, who was returning to the city. Swoosh! A sword formation appeared. Chapter 901. First Kill. Supreme Alliance's first kill. The audience couldn't react in time. After all, the player on the screen was Spade Z's side. When they heard the sound effect, they were stunned for 0.1 seconds. Who died? The director changed the scene immediately. That was when they saw Lin Chintao's body lying between the two towers. Of course, there was also the tall figure standing between the two towers, his robes fluttering in the wind. Tower kill. They couldn't kill him by just one tower. They would have to cross two towers. That was the end of their teamwork. Qin Mo and Bo Jio's teamwork would never end. The two figures were still on the map. The audience couldn't wait any longer. Hurry up and replay it. We want to see the replay. Indeed, the scene had to be replayed. It was too fast. Lin Chintao was still sprinting back to the city when a sword formation suddenly appeared. A sword formation suddenly appeared over there without any warning. Even the silhouettes of people were so fast that they couldn't be seen. The silver glow was the explosive force from the clash of weapons. Blood splattered everywhere. Just like that, he took the first kill arrogantly. Lin Chintao gritted his teeth. Despicable, you actually hid in the bushes beside the two towers, waiting for me to retreat so you could kill me. Isn't that the move you used on me just now? Have you forgotten it so quickly? Qin Mo's voice rang out, noble and calm. Lin Chintao wasn't the only one who stilled, even the shoutcaster. The next second, Lin Chintao came alive. F***CK, Qin Mo, can you stop being so vengeful? I can't, Qin Mo replied as he moved his mouse over a blood-sucking beast, rejecting him calmly. At this moment, Bo Jio swept her long spear. Not only was the defense tower destroyed, but even the soldiers were cleared by her. Bo Jio thought to herself, Lin Chintao, aren't you kidding me by asking the Almighty to stop being vengeful? His greatest strength was vengeance. Bo Jio, who had her dark history flipped, finally saw someone who was in a worse state than her. Hence, she approved of the Almighty's counterattack. His handsome face was incomparably serious as he killed. Lin Chintao wanted to vomit blood. When the two of them cooperated, it didn't seem like they were playing a game, but more like bandits. He didn't even give them a chance to breathe. At this point, Lin Chintao could already feel the pressure. But he was an assassin. If he were to back down now, there would be no way for him to continue the match. Thus, Lin Chintao didn't retreat. Instead, he charged forward to clear the troops. Rao Rong's fingers were a little dull. Because he knew very well that at the start of the match, that guy kept saying that he couldn't be a burden to him. But the truth was that he was dragging him down. His hand speed was much slower than before, and coupled with his lack of understanding of Spade Z, it resulted in the current situation. He had thought that using the Titan formation would completely suppress the other party, making it impossible for them to rush over. But the consequence was that he couldn't keep up with Lin Chintao. If they couldn't keep up, it would be very difficult for them to cooperate. If the opponent was someone else, they would definitely win. But they were facing Qin Mo and Spade Z. They weren't just full of explosive power, they were adept at maneuvering and evading. They had even specially chosen characters that could leap over walls and towers. These skills would allow them to kill and escape at the most crucial moment. This had been a trap from the start. Chapter 902. Captain. Lin Chintao's voice came over. His eyes were a little dark. I'll work hard. Even now, he was still saying, as long as I can keep up with you, we won't lose, right? Captain. Rao Rong's gaze dimmed. He suppressed the emotions that were welling up in his throat, ignoring the vibrating phone in his pocket. He stared at the screen like an unwavering gemstone, standing there quietly. Yes. Rao Rong was a leader. It wasn't just because of his maneuvering and team control. It was also because, at times, just his presence could instill immense confidence. Lin Chintao was such a person. When everyone joined a team, it was because of the Almighty. It was all because of the Almighty's presence in the team. In that instant, when you saw his maneuvering, you would be amazed at how such a handsome gamer could exist in this world. To Lin Chintao, Rao Rong was such a presence. He moved his mouse, gliding past the line of soldiers, taking away a wild beast. The audience watched as Lin Chintao sped up. That wasn't all. Rao Rong walked out from the bottom of the tower, pushing the middle tower as though he had no fear. But upon closer inspection, it was clear. It wasn't because he wasn't afraid, but because of Rao Rong and Lin Chintao's positioning. Even though one of them was in the jungle and the other was in the middle lane, they were extremely close. It was almost as though they were advancing at the same time, completely different from before. But in this wave of soldiers, the tower was smashed into pieces. Even in such a situation, they aren't overwhelmed by the mental pressure, as expected of a strong team. If it had been anyone else, they probably wouldn't have had the courage to come out. After facing Qin Mo and Spade Z's attacks, how many of them could reignite their fighting spirit? They even took the chance to destroy one of Supreme Alliance's defense towers. Seems like Rao Rong and Lin Chintao have recovered. To be honest, if it were me, I would have been disheartened long ago. Thinking about Almighty Qin's move just now, he crossed 2 floors. In other words, if he could do it once, he could do it a second time. It would be a psychological burden. That's right. It isn't just Almighty Qin, even Spade Z is a player who can fight through the tower. If it isn't safe to stand at the bottom of the tower, it would be a little frustrating. But I realized something. As long as Rao Rong is around, it'll be hard for us to cross the tower and kill him because his mind control is really good. It's not a problem for him to stand under the tower, but once he leaves the tower, I can't guarantee his safety. As soon as this person's voice fell, everyone saw a white figure flash past, a silver gleaming sword formation rising, trapping Rao Rong. A PK between the two captains. Everyone widened their eyes and stared unblinkingly, afraid that they would miss out on any details. 2 years had passed. No one knew who was stronger, Rao Rong or Qin Mo. But looking at their finances, Qin Mo seemed to have the upper hand. Second drop of blood. The crowd cheered. What they wanted to see the most was the continuation of the hot-blooded battle. But Rao Rong had never been one of the Supreme Alliance members. In the sword formation, he was forced to take a step back. Chapter 903. This control, it's beautiful. It was indeed beautiful. He had managed to immobilize Qin Mo. Fortunately, he wasn't at the bottom of the tower. If he was at the bottom of the tower, it was highly possible that Qin Mo would be killed. The effect of Rao Rong's control was that all his moves couldn't be used. Moreover, it had a defensive function. The closer he was to him, the faster his HP would be depleted. Lin Chintao glanced over, using a big move to close in, wanting to take Qin Mo down. But Qin Mo was faster, activating the protective barrier. With a flash, he returned to the bushes, leaving behind a streak of silver. This time, Qin Mo's HP was low. Lin Chintao didn't give chase. Because he knew there would be a follow-up. Indeed, there would be a follow-up. The next moment, a figure darted over, a long spear lifting Rao Rong into the air. With a big move, half of Rao Rong's HP was gone. At this moment, Rao Rong was out of control. It would take more than 10 seconds for his control to recover. The figure was agile, not giving Lin Chintao any chance to get close. The moment he saw Rao Rong, he dodged before turning back for another attack. Rao Rong was still dead. Rao Rong was left with less than a third of his HP. On the big screen, the silver light from the spear made it hard for the audience to see clearly. It was too fast, so fast that they couldn't catch it. The director changed the angle swiftly, switching to Spade Z's view. Only then did everyone clearly see the attack that the spear had launched. As the silver light streaked past, the silhouette also changed. Every move and every style was unbelievably handsome. But Lin Chintao's defense was already starting to drain the youngster's HP. The audience held their breaths. The shoutcaster was tense. It's too forceful. It was 2v1, no matter how strong Spade Z was, he wouldn't be able to kill Rao Rong alone. Indeed, it wasn't possible because Lin Chintao was still in pursuit, restricting Spade Z's attack. Bo Jiao moved her right hand, dodging Lin Chintao's first attack but not Rao Rong's control. The youth was pinned down on the spot. It was a small matter that his HP was decreasing. What was more important was that once an assassin was pinned down and unable to move, there would only be one outcome, death. Spade Z shouldn't have gone up alone. Rao Rong is Rao Rong after all. Spade Z underestimated him. But was he really going alone? Not necessarily. Yin Weiyao noticed Qin Mo's finger. That momentary deviation. The next second, a silvery white figure appeared on the screen. He leaped out of the bushes and turned to attack. With a sword formation, he froze Rao Rong in place. KO. Before Spade Z's HP was depleted, Rao Rong was already lying on the ground. The second drop of blood. But the second drop of blood wasn't worth it for the Supreme Alliance. The reason was simple. Both of them were on the verge of death. Once Lin Chintao unleashed his ultimate move, he would at least be able to take one of their heads. Hence, Supreme Alliance hadn't won this 2-on-2 battle. Lin Chintao's eyes turned red. He sped towards Spade Z, delivering a critical strike. Blood splattered everywhere, and Spade Z collapsed just like that. The cheers from Supreme Alliance were stuck in their throats. The last time the youth had lost, he had also been killed by Lin Chintao. This time, history was repeating itself. The joy of obtaining the second blood was like someone had poured a bucket of ice water over his head, extinguishing all the joy that had welled up in his heart. Because at the moment when the youth fell, Chapter 904. It wasn't because Spade Z was weak, but because his opponents were getting stronger. Lin Chintao was no longer the same person from the regional competition. It was probably because he had the most suitable partner that he could fully utilize his advantages. Compared to Spade Z, he wasn't that much weaker. He had speed and positioning, especially with Rao Rong's control. It was a terrifying sight to behold. They could only pray that Almighty Qin could escape. But what confused them was that Almighty Qin didn't seem to have any intention of escaping. Why was that? Was he just going to fight Lin Chintao at such a low HP level? He couldn't win at all. Even Almighty Qin couldn't do that, right? What was wrong with Almighty Qin today? Why wasn't he playing according to the rules? Just as the audience was wondering, the shoutcaster raised his voice. One of the shoutcasters suddenly raised his voice. Resurrection armor. Spade Z has a revival armor. Revival armor, as the name suggested, was a piece of equipment that could revive someone on the spot. When playing a game, the person who set the tempo of the game would usually wear such a piece of equipment. Of course, in order to have such an equipment, one had to have enough gold coins. Could this be the reason why Spade Z has been plundering the troops, killing the tyrant king, and even the beasts by the side of the road? The shoutcaster was in disbelief. Revival armor. Some of the audience who didn't understand were stunned for a moment, but Lin Chintao wasn't. But Lin Chintao wasn't a fool. After killing Spade Z, he realized something was wrong. As a veteran player, he knew what was going on. But no one had expected little Spade to have a revival armor. How did he get it? He didn't have it before. This was the question everyone was concerned about. Besides Lin Feng, the shoutcaster, and the entire audience. The director sat at the backstage directing, watching as the number of views reached its peak. Because it was a live broadcast. When the shoutcaster shouted those 3 words, veteran gods of the game sent luxury cars one after another to the live broadcast room. After all, this double fight was really cool. A lot of people wanted to know when Spade Z had released the resurrection armor. The advantage of watching a live broadcast was that while watching the battle, half of the screen was used to explain the equipment of the players. This time, the National League would be broadcasted live on all platforms. The broadcasting team was the most professional, and they knew what everyone wanted to see. He immediately pulled up the video of Spade Z. At that time, Spade Z was still under Rao Rong's control. The young man brought up the equipment changing page with his left hand and clicked the mouse with his right hand. He quickly sold his other equipment and used all his gold coins to buy the resurrection armor. At that time, Spade Z was still alive and had half a tank of HP. However, what they didn't expect was that the young man would change his attire at this time. Just how fast was his hand speed to be able to complete this action in an instant? Just by looking at the few pages that the young man had flipped quickly, one could understand. This was truly heaven-defying. After all, the audience on the other side of the internet was the audience on the other side of the internet. The scene here was the hottest. Many pairs of eyes were staring at the big screen, and even their breathing seemed to slow down. Time had clearly passed very quickly. But at this moment, it seemed to have been stretched infinitely. No matter how complicated Lin Chintao's thoughts were, his first reaction was to stab Spade Z on the spot. But his ultimate move was gone. It wasn't lethal enough. Players who were new to Hero always thought that the key to victory was how much HP one had. In reality, that wasn't the case. Firstly, it was the character's equipment and finances. Of course, most importantly, the difference between the two depended on whether the character you were controlling had a killer move or not. If it was used up, how was he going to fight? Besides, he was facing Spade Z. At this moment, the director swiftly shifted the camera angle. The youngster, who had been lying on the ground, stood up once more. Just as Lin Chintao was about to dodge, his long spear sweeping across, a silver flash. Within 10 meters, there was no one. Lin Chintao was already having a hard time dealing with such a silver flash. At this moment, Qin Mo, who was beside him, closed in, his clothes fluttering, his long sword like a rainbow. In an instant, Lin Chintao's HP was reduced to a critical level. Moreover, Qin Mo's move had greatly reduced his speed. Fortunately, the defense tower was just ahead. As long as he could reach the bottom of the tower, he would be able to escape this pursuit. At this moment, Lin Chintao's palms were drenched in sweat. Even his team members were clenching their fists tightly. Rao Rong was counting down the seconds until his resurrection. 3 seconds left. At this moment, Lin Chintao had reached the bottom of the tower, but had he really escaped? Just as some of them heaved a sigh of relief, they watched as the youngster leaped up, waving her mouse. Her left hand moved swiftly, her long spear piercing through the enemy before retreating swiftly. Behind her, only the silver flash of weapons and the dazzling sky were left. Tower crossing, kill. KO. When these two words crossed the screen. Amidst the silver flowers, the long spear on his back, his sleeves fluttering. The youngster on the horse stood proudly, the silver light falling behind him. In that instant, many fangirls couldn't help standing up, holding their faces as they shrieked, Spade Z. Even the most handsome back view couldn't compare. Everything in the game became that person's back view. After killing the enemy, the youngster lifted his long spear, taking 2 slow steps forward before sweeping past swiftly, killing another wave of soldiers. The tower was destroyed, and the soldiers were dead. In this double fight, Supreme Alliance managed to take down 2 players. Both of them didn't return to the city. Instead, like 2 bolts of lightning, they split up into the wilderness on the left and right sides. They killed monsters to replenish their HP, as though it was planned. After sweeping everything, they regrouped in the middle lane. When they regrouped, the HP bar was already full. Even the shoutcasters stood up when they saw this scene. This year's Supreme Alliance, they were really strong. So strong that it wasn't within their expectations. Regardless of the commentator, they couldn't explain their fighting style. It was too illogical. There was no need for words, just kill. Even Qin Mo's fighting style was brand new, more lethal than usual. That was because he didn't have to worry about the entire field, he just had to fight alongside his teammates. Could this be the secret weapon that Feng Yi mentioned? The other club managers were starting to fall into a daze. They recalled Feng Yi's smiling face during the gathering, the words he had said while holding a glass of red wine. They had assumed that Feng Yi had poached Spade Z to anger them. From the looks of it, Wang Bang hadn't just been referring to the new king, Spade Z. Chapter 905. On the screen, the 2 of them had joined forces and forcefully destroyed one of the defense towers. After Rao Rong revived, he could only defend the middle tower. The defense towers on both sides had been destroyed by the troops. After the 2 of them split up, they attacked from both sides. Rao Rong couldn't go anywhere. It wasn't just wrong, it was too late. Was this Supreme Alliance's strategy? The 2 shoutcasters seemed to be at a loss for words, unable to utter a single word. At this moment, in the highest circle of the audience, a handsome man sat lazily on a designated VIP seat. A handsome man sat lazily on a special VIP seat. The visual effect was the best here, and he could see the big screen in front of him. Even the seat was more comfortable than usual. It seemed like this was the only way he could stretch his long legs. It wasn't an exaggeration to call him a handsome man. 2 buttons on his white shirt were undone, revealing his elegant neck. His face was extremely flirtatious. His silky black hair was tied behind him, but he didn't look feminine at all. Moreover, he was extremely handsome. Is this the person you wanted to see? The handsome man tilted his head, glancing at the person beside him with an arched brow. It wasn't anyone else, it was Hoshino. He had a gentle face and a natural composure. No matter what he saw, there would always be a smile on his face. Especially when he looked at Bojo, his smile would deepen, soothing like water. Tisk, tsk, tsk. The handsome man shook his head and turned to place his arm by Hoshino's side. Look at how sweet your smile is. Those who don't know might think you're related to someone else. You're just a little better at gaming. Hoshino tilted his head, looking at the handsome face inches away. Now you should know why I care so much about Supreme Alliance. Chi Namo, Spade Z, the handsome man laughed, his finger sliding across his chin. These two aren't bad. If I'm not wrong, Chi Namo should be playing the same way as me. But you aren't looking at Chi Namo, it's that person, the youngster with dyed silver hair. Hoshino, when did you learn to appreciate others? Hoshino took a sip of tea. Why do I sound like an arrogant B***** to you? You don't even know how to appreciate others. The pretty boy glanced at Hoshino, breaking into a lazy smile. Alright, the competition is about to end early. The winner will definitely be Supreme Alliance. You saw what you wanted to see, can you go back now? It's tiring for me to keep you company. Hoshino looked at the lazy man and stood up. Let's go. Indeed, it's time to go. If you don't leave now, I'm starting to wonder who you're going to fall in love with. Mainan put one hand in his pocket. Once he got up, he became even more domineering. With his background, he had never been a simple character. Hoshino was very clear about this. Hoshino didn't refute Mainan's words and was the first to walk forward. The pretty boy also took 2 steps forward. However, after that, he turned around sharply. His phoenix-like eyes swept over the silver-haired youth sitting in front of the computer. The corners of his mouth curled up, and there was an indescribable sense of danger. Just like a lion living in the grassland, it looked extremely elegant, but in fact, it was more difficult to provoke than anyone else. Spade Z. What exactly is in your body? Chapter 906. Everyone knew that this was the end of the match. The defense towers on both sides had been destroyed. The defense tower on the middle lane had been destroyed by Chi Nemo and Bojo. The difference in their finances was too great, even Rao Rong couldn't stop them. But no one could deny that this was an exciting match. If not, the match wouldn't have lasted for nearly 2 hours. Even when they reached the bottom of the city, they didn't succeed immediately. He did not succeed immediately. The tug-of-war lasted for half an hour. At the end, Chi Nemo had used the revival armor. Bojo had sacrificed her life to take down the enemy's city. As the pieces fell, 2 huge words appeared on the screen. Everyone in the audience stood up. Lin Feng turned back and looked at Yun Hu with his most handsome and brilliant smile. Who, we won. Yes, Supreme Alliance had won. A 1v1 and 2v2 victory. Even if there was a team battle, it wouldn't affect the outcome. The shoutcaster was still in a daze. He watched as the youngster and Chi Nemo stood up. Their backs were always eye-catching and handsome. Coupled with their pure black uniforms, they looked like the commanders in the Star Trek movies. The shoutcaster finally understood what it meant to be the king of bombs. If this was the Supreme Alliance, they were indeed qualified to go up against Xiangnan. Lin Chintao was the only one who hadn't stood up in front of the computer. If he had been a little faster, as long as he had been a little faster, perhaps, if he had been smarter, the outcome wouldn't have been like this. Why hadn't he thought of the revival armor? Lin Chintao gripped the mouse tightly, his fringe covering his expression. But even then, the corners of his lips had sunk. At this moment, a hand pressed down on his head, a clear voice saying, "We can come back next year." It was Rao Rong, his chiseled side profile as though no matter what happened, he would always look the same. Lin Chintao couldn't take it anymore, he rubbed his nose and bolted upright, his voice muffled. Yes. Seriously, in front of their captain, he was just like a loyal dog. Bojo glanced over. Her guard against Rao Rong had lessened. Instead, she could help Rao Rong with other matters. After all, that chatterbox Lin Chintao probably wouldn't want to see such a good captain leave. The team members gathered together. Feng Yi was here to deliver the news. No matter what, his lips were always curled into a sly smile. The results of the match between Xiangnan and Dream City are out. As he spoke, he glanced at his team members. 3 o'clock, Xiangnan wins. This result was not unexpected, and could even be said to be within his expectations. But ever since the start of the National League, Xiangnan's record had always been 3 o'clock. What caught everyone's attention was that not all of their starting members had appeared, which meant that they still had some strength left. Lin Fang's expression became serious again. We will also win 3-0 today. There was still a team battle. Regardless of whether Supreme Alliance had won or not, respecting the opponent was the best way to answer to oneself. Feng Yi chuckled. Good luck. Many assumed that Supreme Alliance was competing with Xiangnan. In fact, ever since Supreme Alliance debuted, they had always been competing with him. In the esports industry, strength spoke louder than words. That was how they lived up to their youth. The atmosphere around Lin Chintao's team was heavy. His team members hung their heads, their faces filled with dejection. With the outcome already in their grasp, they didn't wish to participate in the third match. Rao Rong glanced over, pressing onto one of their shoulders. Do you want everyone to think that we don't have the magnanimity to compete in the third match? What's there to compete for? We have already lost. Li Nuo scoffed. You bragged about how amazing you were when you came back, but you still lost. Lin Chintao really wanted to stuff this young master back into the womb and reforge him. He would never understand that if it hadn't been for their captain, their team would have lost even worse. Did he really think that Spade Z and Qin Mo's teamwork was as simple as it seemed? Lin Chintao clenched his fists, wanting to retort. But a deep voice came from beside him. I was the one who dragged you down in the double match, but you have to participate in the team battle. It isn't about winning or losing, but if you give up the chance to fight, you will never understand what kind of team Supreme Alliance is. All the research and data are useless against them because they are stronger every second. That is Supreme Alliance. Rao Rong's gaze deepened as he looked at his team members. Are you going to be left behind? One of them bolted upright. I'll play. Chen Nuo couldn't understand them at all, they were being unreasonable. Since he wasn't going to participate, he might as well let the little one he had bullied take his place. The little one was truly a newbie, his hands trembling as he held the mouse. However, esports seemed to have this kind of magic. Even though he was a newbie, he wanted to fight alongside the seniors of the team. He didn't care about the outcome, he just wanted to be worthy of the person who had once studied the Almighty even when he was exhausted. The team battle began. For those who only cared about winning or losing, the competition was over. 10 kilometers away from the esports arena. In an apartment building. Ding! A message came from the computer. The tall and slender man closed the chat box, walking towards the sweet-looking girl. Rao Rong lost and the money has been transferred. Shouldn't we prepare the sacrificial offerings? Let's wait a while more. The girl's fingers swiped across the screen, her lips curling into a sinister smile. Rao Rong didn't lose intentionally. Shock flashed across the tall and slender man's face. You mean, as expected, those who aren't of our race can't work together with us? The girl's voice became colder and colder. If that's the case, then throw him out first. The major crimes unit is so strict, there has to be someone to bear all the blame. Go back and tell him, as long as he confesses to these crimes, I will avenge his father. This is his last chance, I don't have much patience. The tall and slender man chuckled. You should have done that a long time ago. A dog that isn't loyal to us will only bite us in the end. I'll get it done now. This way, the crime squad's attention will be on Rao Rong, giving us a chance to sell our goods. The Golden Triangle is starting to get anxious. Do you think we should give Rao Rong a shot? It'll be easier for him to control. There's no need for that, Chin Mo will notice. The girl's face was filled with both love and hatred. That person isn't easy to deal with, you know that. The tall and slender man glanced up, his gaze deep. I'm afraid he won't be as formidable in the future. The girl turned back, looking at him. The tall and slender man continued, the higher-up said that the crime squad's newly hired senior criminal psychologist has arrived. That's good. The girl's eyes dimmed, the venom in them sending chills down one's spine. Oh right, have you found the person I asked you to investigate? The tall and slender man shook his head. As of now, no one has admitted to the cyber attack. That isn't all, no one knows who did it. Logically speaking, there shouldn't be such a powerful expert in China. Could it have been a coincidence that you were attacked that day? But it wasn't without results. Chin Mo seems to have an expert hacker with him, someone he poached from the public. As you know, his codename is Fatty and he was in the mall that day. Perhaps he was the one behind it. Got it. Think of a way to flirt with Master Wu inside. The girl glanced at her nails. I want to know what exactly she did to make Chin Mo deal with the Wu family. More importantly, what information does she have on Spade Z? That's the only way to create trouble. I've said it before, if you want to destroy a person, you have to start with the people around him. This is the most important thing. The tall and slender man's gaze darkened. Don't worry, I'll do it immediately. The girl didn't say anything else. In her heart, she also felt that perhaps it was because of a moment of carelessness that she was locked onto that person's position. After all, no one in the hacker forum had admitted to it. It could have been Fatty. The girl didn't give up completely, using the internet to investigate further. She had investigated almost all the top few hackers on the hacker ranking board, but there weren't any clues. At this moment, the internet phone rang. It was the higher-ups. The girl lifted the corner of her lips and pressed the call button. This time, everyone earned well. Shouldn't you give us some convenience? Our goods have to be sold eventually. I called you to tell you about this. Now that the storm has passed, you can do as you please. If there's a sudden inspection, I'll inform you. How is it my business? It's our business. I've prepared everything on my side, including the people and the goods. We'll let the female students get involved first, and then we can open the market. You should know that young people these days like to play. Novelty is very exciting for them. Of course, I know that. But why did you suddenly come to China? If it's just for business, why did you create so much trouble? Using the murder case as a cover, just to earn money. This was a test. The person understood that some things should be done and some things shouldn't be done. The girl looked at the bags of white powder, her lips lifting into a smile. Of course it's to earn money. Using this to gradually control the entire country. That was the purpose of this operation. But of course, the girls wouldn't say anything. The person didn't probe further, just reminding, don't go overboard, earn money, don't do anything else. The crime squad can only stall for a while. I understand. The girl replied, don't worry, I don't like killing people. Watching them commit suicide. Letting that person know that not everyone in this world was humane. That was her motive. Chin Mo should have joined them a long time ago. Only by joining them would he be able to unleash his full potential. People like them were the ones standing at the top of the pyramid. Toying with the fates of others was the most beautiful thing. But that person always had his own insistence. Since he was insistent, she would destroy his roots, at the same time, in the city center. Director Huang's office. A person was sprawled there, holding a magnifying glass. He was of mixed blood, but because of his European heritage, he had a strong presence. He looked like a gentleman from the British aristocracy. His fingers tapped on the documents, and he quickly locked onto his target. That day, I think it's necessary to investigate everyone in the cinema. Don't you Chinese have a saying, you'd rather kill 1,000 wrongly than let one go? Director Huang thought, bro, where did you get your Chinese from? Besides, we are a country governed by law, we aren't violent. Mr. Smith, other than this, what else do you need from us? With his leader around, Director Huang still gave face to the foreign guest. Smith glanced at him. I heard you have a criminal psychologist here and it has been almost a month but there aren't any leads on Z. Since that's the case, I would like him to hand over all the authority to me. I don't mean to snatch anything from him, but I will take the lead and he will cooperate. That way, there won't be any problems. After all, criminal psychologists aren't able to keep up with us when it comes to certain things. When Director Huang heard those words, he really wanted to give Qin Mo a call. He would put the phone on speaker so that Qin Mo could hear how she despised him. These days, there weren't many people who dared to despise young Master Qin. So, Mr. Smith, you're saying that Z is the culprit behind this series of cases? The foreigner replied. He pondered for a moment before replying, there is a 90% similarity in the crime but I have to confirm the rest. I understood the situation before coming, your criminal psychologist overturned my previous definition. He doesn't think Z is the culprit. I've crossed hands with Z more than 10 times on Fifth Avenue and I know Z's style better than anyone else. Hence, we can't let our guard down. Director Huang, little Huang didn't want to say anything else. He just wanted to call young Master Qin. Fortunately, the foreigner didn't continue attacking, instead, he started with his analysis of the case. After listening to the entire process, Director Huang felt that this matter was getting deeper and deeper. He had a very bad feeling about this. But he couldn't put his finger on it. At 5 p.m., at the esports venue, the competition officially ended. As the victor, MVP Qin Mo had to be interviewed as usual. Chapter 907. Bojiu arched a brow. I'm just buying a bottle of water. Why do I have to leave now that I'm here? What happened to the basic trust between humans? Qin Mo glanced at the youngster before turning towards the bodyguard beside him. Buy a bottle of water for young Master Zhou. Yes, Boss Qin. The bodyguards dressed in black would usually disguise themselves as assistants and follow Qin Mo around. This was a decision made by Qin Shi's parents after that year to ensure Qin Mo's safety. Bojiu watched the bodyguard leave before turning towards Qin Mo. The Almighty obviously didn't believe her. Didn't he say that sleeping with him would lower his guard's guard? This reason didn't seem to work in front of the Almighty. The words on the internet couldn't be trusted. Qin Mo seemed to be done admiring the youngster's gloomy expression. He was in a good mood. What else do you want? I'll get someone to buy it. Water will do. Bojiu stuffed her hands into her pockets, a smile on her lips. She couldn't lose to the Almighty in a battle of wits and courage. But, Brother Mo, can you let go of my collar first? It wasn't nice to be dragged around like that. Qin Mo lifted the corners of his lips, looking suave. He inched closer to the youngster's face. I'll let you go when we reach the interview location. Qin Mo was a man of his words. But even if he let go of the youngster, he would still be within his sight. Hence, the interviewer couldn't help turning to look at the youngster that Almighty Qin had tossed onto the seat beside him. It was already the finals of the National League. Therefore, this interview was different from any other interview. It was conducted through a collaboration between the live stream platform and the media. It was akin to a mini live stream. Even though it wasn't long, it was at least 7 minutes. The host would conduct a simple interview with Chin Mo based on the questions raised by the audience in the live broadcast room. She had already done one interview with Xiangnan. Now, it was Supreme Alliance's turn. The interviewer watched the youngster for another day. As expected, the atmosphere was different. Chin Mo might have said that he wanted to control her strictly, but in reality, other than the water, he had gotten his bodyguard to buy some snacks and tossed them into the youngster's arms. Bo Jiu was a foodie. She ate almost everything in sight. His appetite was also very big. At this time, his stomach was indeed a little empty, especially after a match. It was a little taxing on his brain. It had to be said that the Almighty was very considerate at times. Besides, Bo Jiu had nothing better to do. Hence, she opened a bag, biting on a finger biscuit while watching the Almighty being interviewed. His silver hair was tied up by a hairpin, and his side profile was clean and handsome. There was a youthful smile on his lips, which was very seductive. He was completely unaware of how strong his presence was. The female host tried her best to pull her gaze back and clear her throat. After seeing the youngster, she was inspired. She changed the question she had prepared beforehand and said with a slight smile, "Almighty Chin, after this competition, the internet is saying that you and Spade Z are the king of Supreme Alliance. When you two work together, it's like a pair of kings. I wonder how you guys managed to develop such chemistry. Is it convenient for you to tell me?" Bo Jiu paused in the middle of eating the biscuit when she heard her name being called. Her bright eyes and white teeth were indeed attractive. Chin Mo glanced at a certain someone who seemed to be in a daze, and a hint of a smile flashed across his eyes. He was a little black-bellied. When he looked at the camera again, his expression was neutral. "We eat and sleep together, it's only natural that we have chemistry." The female host seemed to be in disbelief. She tried hard to suppress the urge to scream, pretending to be calm as she repeated, "Eating and sleeping together is indeed helpful in developing chemistry. But don't forget, this was a live broadcast." After Chin Mo said that, the live stream was flooded with comments. "Oh my God, what exactly did I hear? The Almighty and Big Spade are living together. They eat and sleep together. I'm just concerned about how they sleep together, starry eyes. Wait a minute, did Almighty Chin look like he was looking at someone? I have the same feeling. Logically speaking, shouldn't Almighty Chin be looking at the camera during a live broadcast? Let's not talk about this first. Host, hurry up and ask, is Almighty Chin living together with Big Spade? I feel like I'm breaking up. What should I do? I just fell in love with a youngster, how did he end up with someone else so quickly?" There were too many people asking the same question. Even if the host wanted to avoid it, she couldn't pretend she didn't see it. Besides, it was such a curious matter. The host didn't want to avoid it, hence, she continued probingly, in order to improve chemistry, some team members would indeed stay together when they booked a hotel. They would also have 2 to 3 days of training to discuss strategies. Is it the same for Almighty Chin and Spade Z? No. It was a surprising answer. Chin Mo's face didn't change at all, as though it was an ordinary matter. "We stay together." This time, even the female host stuttered. "S live together." Bo Jiu frowned. When did this happen? Why wasn't she aware of it? At this time, the female host was so excited that she didn't know what to say. After all, this news was a real topic and benefit for some fans. The comments in the live streaming channel could no longer be controlled. Waves of "ah." The female host calmed herself down. "Almighty Chin, you're saying that you're living together. Living together. You can understand it that way." Chin Mo's voice was calm. He stood there, exuding an air of nobility. Especially since he was wearing a Star Trek commander's uniform, it made him look even more aloof. But he just had to drop such a bomb. It was obvious that she admitted to living together. This was not the end. When he saw the youngster stand up, Chin Mo turned his head. Even though his voice was faint, everyone watching the live stream could hear him. Wait for me a little longer. But in an instant, another wave of comments exploded on the screen. I was wondering why the Almighty kept looking in that direction. So there really is someone there. Ah, did you hear the Almighty's tone just now? There's a hint of command in his pampering and connivance in his command. I bet $100 that the person beside him is definitely Big Spade. Another $100. I never expected Big Spade to be such a loyal dog. He even knows to wait by the side when the Almighty is doing a live stream. How obedient. Now, as long as I close my eyes, I can imagine the way those two people interact. One is doing a live interview, and the other is waiting by the side. I can feel their love through the screen. What should I do? They are all from the same team. Those CP fans shouldn't overthink it. Just stay close or you'll just bring shame to your almighty Spade. After someone said that, the popularity would die down. However, Chin Mo could see the topics from this end of the live stream. His gaze paused on the last topic, his eyes darkening. Then he glanced over. The audience has already guessed that you're a listener. Come over and greet everyone. Listener. That means there really is someone else. The audience couldn't control their excitement. This time, Bojo couldn't leave even if she wanted to. On the other hand, all the reporters were shocked. When did the Almighty become so polite during a live stream? So passionate. In the past, the Almighty had never interacted with the audience. Unless there was a technical question, he would say it. The rest of the time, he would reply with an MMH or, I don't know. It was unprecedented for him to pay attention to the comments left by the audience. On the other side, the silver-haired youngster placed a hand in his pocket and smiled. I won't be appearing on the screen. Isn't this Brother Mo's personal live stream? The voice that was as clear as water came out. It wasn't impatient, it was a little deep. The audience's blood was boiling as they listened to this. F***CK, it's really my Big Spade. What did I say? Only Big Spade can make the Almighty like this. The two of them are even together during the live stream. I don't believe there isn't anything between them. Let me emphasize, I'm a straight man. This isn't convincing at all. But I really want to see Big Spade appear on the screen. The small screen during the competition isn't enough. With Almighty Chin's possessiveness, he probably won't let Big Spade appear. You better give up. It had to be said that this fan was right on point. Indeed, Chin Mo wouldn't let her appear. The reason why he allowed her to speak was to dispel the arrogant thoughts of others. He had already made it obvious enough. He couldn't wait to let everyone know. This person was his. As expected, after Chin Mo spoke, the people who had been warning the CP fans not to let their imaginations run wild disappeared automatically. In the next few minutes of the interview, Chin Mo would exchange a few words with the youngster from time to time. Someone asked, Almighty, what is Big Spade doing while you are doing a live stream? Chin Mo asked calmly. Your Big Spade is eating biscuits. Some people started to imagine the answer. Thinking about the youngster's face, he would be handsome no matter what he ate. It was inevitable that they would be infatuated for a while. But this couldn't compare to the fact that they could see two male almighties at the same time in a live stream, even though one of them only revealed his voice and not his face. But in the eyes of the fans, this was already enough to satisfy them. After all, it was a combined interview between the two of them. This round of dog food wasn't too much or too little, it was just right. The live stream came to an end. The female host held on to the microphone. Thank you, Almighty Chin, for accepting our interview. Thank you, Almighty Spade Z, for listening. I hope Supreme Alliance can bring us more surprises in the upcoming competition. Just like that, the interview ended. Bojo had mysteriously cohabited with someone. Movie Queenan, who was far away in England, was watching the video. At that time, she had been holding an apple in her hand. It was a must for all actors to maintain a perfect figure in order to act. But even so, when she heard her son's reply, Movie Queenan was shocked as well. Even though she knew that her son treated Joe differently, she hadn't expected it to be this different. Cohabiting. Her son, who had always liked peace and couldn't wait to be alone in a room every day. He was actually cohabiting with someone. Movie Queenan hung up her phone. Her nose was straight and her eyes were mesmerizing. But somehow, she felt that something wasn't what she had imagined. Would Chin Mo and Joe be too good for each other? That was Movie Queen Anne's only worry. Her eyes were filled with righteousness. In the end, she stood up and said to the person beside her, "Book a ticket back, I want to go back and take a look." "Yes, madam." She was also a mother. But when it came to Lin Feng, it was a different scene. He was still in his uniform and in the resting area of the esports arena. He held on to his phone and promised, "Mom, I will take care of who normally, don't worry about that." "How do you ask me to take care of him?" "Just like usual." "Of course, we have to sleep in the same room." "What do you mean by don't go overboard?" Lin Feng's face was filled with question marks. Mother Lin didn't want to make things clear. Even if her son was magnanimous, it would be a waste if he couldn't solve this problem. The current situation was already very clear. Regardless of the competition, as long as there was a group activity that required the two of them to sleep together, his little rascal would always get a share with Yunhu. This was clearly her son's plan to get close to Hu legitimately. Mother Lin felt that she didn't know much about the situation and had to come up with a plan. "You have a competition in 2 days, you have to work hard in this area. Also, when appropriate, maintain a distance from Hu. You are affecting Hu's search for a girlfriend." "Got it." Lin Feng replied nonchalantly. In his heart, he thought, F***ck, I'm the one who's being affected. That fellow has never thought of finding a girl. But such words couldn't be said. Hence, Lin Feng could only endure it. Mother Lin continued, "There's one more important thing." "Go ahead." Lin Feng looked like he was ready to listen to orders. Mother Lin's voice was deep. "Regardless of when or what you want to do, you can't lay a hand on Hu, understand? That's all, I'm hanging up." Lin Feng listened to the silence and the question marks on his face deepened. What was going on? Why did she warn him about such things? He was violent, but why would he lay a hand on Hu? In the past, his mother had never said such things. Why do I feel that there's something strange that I can't tell? Chapter 908. I'm going to the washroom to relieve myself. Bojo stood there, her brows arched. She seemed to be asking if he was going to ask someone else to replace her. This time, Chin Mo didn't ask anyone to replace her. He lowered his gaze, his voice calm. Together. Bojo, the female host, hadn't left. More accurately, the interview team hadn't left. The live stream had stopped and the cameras had been switched off. But they were still there. After listening to the conversation between the two of them, everyone present pretended to look to the side, but in fact, they had been listening all along. "Brother Mo, are you really going to watch me 24 hours a day?" The youngster smiled devilishly. Chin Mo swept her a glance. "I have to watch you carefully since you have a criminal record." Hence, in the Almighty's eyes, she was a criminal record. Bojo couldn't help but feel frustrated. At this moment, the man lifted her chin. Bojo had assumed that the Almighty wouldn't do anything in front of the audience. It was obvious that the Almighty didn't care about the people around him. Can you eat until your mouth is full of biscuit crumbs? Chin Mo's voice was still magnetic and pleasant to the ears. Bojo lifted her hand, wanting to wipe it off. But the moment she lifted her hand, a cool sensation was imprinted on the corner of her mouth. The corner of his mouth was imprinted with a slight coolness, with the unique minty tobacco scent of men. The touch was incomparably familiar. Bojo stilled. Her dark eyes watched the handsome face that was inches away from her. They were so close that she could see the Almighty's enviable eyelashes. There was also that face that didn't require any maintenance, the noble aura, and the overly tall nose bridge. His pair of black eyes had a hint of gray in them. Bojo knew it was all because of the Almighty's mixed blood. But he was so devilish. Anyone who saw him would lose their senses. Especially the Almighty's actions. Bojo could clearly feel the tip of his tongue gliding past her lips. It was like a feather, giving off an indescribable feeling. Bojo's ears quivered. Where did the Almighty learn this move of kissing me without even greeting me? All right. Chin Mo straightened, his fingertips still caressing the youngster's chin. He smiled. Why? Do you want me to kiss you? Wait until there's no one else. Bojo felt even more depressed. On the other hand, the people from the interview group looked shocked. No one knew that when they saw that incomparably noble man bend down and gently kiss the corner of the young man's mouth, their hearts were in turmoil. That scene was indeed very beautiful. The two of them standing together were simply too compatible. But, Almighty, do you even care if there are people around? At this moment, Chin Mo turned around and glanced behind him. The people in the interview team were all in this circle. They knew what they should and shouldn't report. Whether it was for the sake of professional ethics or for the sake of their own future, they certainly wouldn't tell anyone what they saw. However, they had always thought that these relationships were just imagined by the fans online. After all, it was normal for team members to put their arms around each other's shoulders and live together. During the national competition, such special situations would indeed occur. They had followed young Master Chin for a long time, so they all knew how prideful he was. No matter how good-looking a man or woman was, they couldn't get close to him. Chapter 909. No matter what, kissing someone in public was too shocking. Just from the expression of the female host, it was obvious how much of an impact this matter had on them. Actually, even the bodyguard who had been by Chin Mo's side for a long time was shocked, but he didn't show it. But young master, what would madam and boss think if they saw you like this? It was obvious that Chin Mo was declaring his sovereignty. It was probably because of a certain sentence in the live stream room. He might as well let the people in the industry know that this wasn't a figment of his imagination. This person belonged to him. His fingers stroked that smooth chin again. Chin Mo watched the youngster's eyes, recalling the way she had sat lazily eating her biscuits. She had been so obedient and he had wanted to pinch her. It was clear that a light kiss wasn't enough for Chin Mo. He grabbed the youngster's wrist and walked towards the corridor. Bojo watched his movements. What are you doing? Aren't you going to the toilet? Chin Mo replied nonchalantly. He brought Bojo into a dead end. Bojo wasn't dumb, this didn't look like a toilet. But when she glanced up, before she could say a word, she was pushed against the wall. The next moment, a fragrant kiss came. This time, Chin Mo's strength was obviously different. Reaching out, he pressed the youth's waist down and forcefully pried open those light pink lips, inhaling the sweet breath, not even letting go of the tip of the lilac tongue. Bojo knew that she wasn't as skilled as the Almighty in this aspect. Her mind went blank. She couldn't tell where the numbness came from, but in that instant, her legs went limp. When the hands reached into his t-shirt, his waist trembled heavily. It turned into a puddle of water. Fortunately, after the kiss, the man caught her, moving closer to her ear. His warm breath was scorching. "You are really sensitive." Bojo's ears turned red, but she didn't have the strength to move. Chin Mo seized this opportunity. He watched as the youngster's eyes turned red from the kiss. His eyes darkened, and he pressed her tighter against him. He gave her another round of deep kisses until the back of the youngster's ears turned an alluring pink. Chin Mo then stopped. He pressed the youngster into his arms, his breathing becoming slightly heavy. Bojo knew better than anyone else what it looked like when the Almighty was moved. Their breaths were filled with each other's breaths. The most awkward thing was that it was seen by the same person again. Lin Feng also felt that he really should buy a lottery ticket today to try his luck. Why was it that no matter where he went, he could see Little Spade and Captain kissing? The main thing was that the two of them acted as if nothing had happened. The captain glanced sideways and glanced at him. It was obvious that he was the one who had disturbed them. Bojo had been feeling gloomy, but when she saw Lin Feng's frown, she broke into a smile. She lifted her hand and placed it on his shoulder, smiling playfully at him. Lin Feng felt that it was a provocation. Wasn't it just two guys kissing? He was used to it and that was it. As a straight man, he had to suppress the discomfort in his heart in order to be manly and free. "Captain, the entire team has gathered and we are heading to the nightclub to celebrate. They asked me to get you guys. Captain, you guys. Come over once you're done kissing." With that, Lin Feng turned and walked away as though there was a terrifying beast behind him. Chin Mo retracted his gaze and placed it on the hand on his shoulder. He said slowly, "It seems like someone hasn't had enough kissing." Bojo obviously knew who he was referring to. In order to prevent the Almighty from catching her again, she bent down sharply and leaped out suavely. Chin Mo glanced at his empty hand, his beautiful thin lips lifting playfully. He walked over as well. Compared to the previous time, Lin Feng's reaction was much more normal. At the very least, he didn't study Yunhu. Supreme Alliance was rich. Everyone in the esports industry knew that. Besides, Supreme Alliance's style had always been to play however they wanted once they won the competition. Besides, they had a smiling director like Feng Yi. All of them boarded the commercial car and returned to the hotel for a short break before having a sumptuous meal. Next, they took the high-speed rail back to Jiang City. It was barely 10 p.m. If they didn't go to the nightclub at this hour, it would be a waste of their hard work. Those were Lin Feng's words. Supreme Alliance went to the Jiang family's territory, the most luxurious card room near the stage. There were more than 10 bottles of champagne opened. At the start, Shui Yaoyao didn't know they were going to this nightclub. It was only after he arrived that he stopped in his tracks. This was the Jiang family's business after all. She knew a little. She was afraid she would see that person. Bojo seemed to have sensed Shui Yaoyao's thoughts. She turned, her hands still stuffed into her pockets arrogantly. There was a unique gentleness in her voice. "It's fine for everyone to come together unless the Jiang family doesn't want to do business. Or is there something going on between you and Jiangzhua?" Shui Yaoyao was stunned. She immediately denied, "No, nothing." She wasn't suited for lying. When she replied, her gaze seemed to waver. Bojo was just testing the waters. She frowned when she saw Shui Yaoyao's reaction. Then she smiled. "Don't be nervous, I was just saying. Let's go and celebrate." Shui Yaoyao nodded. She was still a little nervous. There were some things she didn't want Her Highness Joe to know. From the beginning until now, she had caused enough trouble for His Highness Joe. This kind of thing was ultimately her own decision, so it was better not to say it out loud. But there was one thing. Shui Yao Yao said in a low voice, 2 days ago, when I was at the Jiang family, I heard that Miss Wu was investigating you. She even wanted to contact Almighty Qin. Your Highness Joe, why don't you stay in the same room with me for the rest of the competition? I'm afraid that Almighty Qin will notice something. Bo Jiu glanced over and smiled lightly. The Almighty already knows. He already knows. Shui Yao Yao stilled. What? What was going on? Bo Jiu continued, there are also some spectators that came to watch the competition. Spectators? Shui Yao Yao's eyes were filled with worry. You mean the fans? What about them? Bo Jiu paused. They promised to keep it a secret for me. But some things will be revealed sooner or later. I still have to deal with Fu Zhongyi. Once I'm done with him. Bo Jiu paused. She glanced up and smiled. Yao Yao, it seems like this free brother of yours has many female friends. She was changing the topic. In the past, Shui Yao Yao's first reaction would be to look at the man surrounded by beauties. But this time, Shui Yao Yao could hear the hidden meaning behind Her Highness Zhou's words. What would happen after she dealt with Fu Zhongyi? What was she going to do? Shui Yao Yao wasn't stupid. She understood the meaning behind her words. She had always felt that Her Highness Zhou was different from the people around her. She didn't look like an ordinary high school student. She didn't look like one at all. But even if she didn't look like one, it didn't change the fact that she was a high school student. Because the Supreme Alliance members hadn't entered. Just then, Qin Mo's phone rang. It was a school director on the phone. The headmaster replied tactfully, I guess that young Master Qin should have reached Jiang City after the competition. That's why I called to ask about your brother. In the second half of the second semester of Year 2, the school will require all students to stay on campus. Student Fu Jiu hasn't completed the procedure yet. Required to stay on campus. Qin Mo frowned. In the male dormitory. The headmaster replied immediately, that's right. You lived there before and should know that the dormitory conditions in our school aren't bad. Even though it's 6 people per room, there's plenty of space. Qin Mo's voice was calm. It isn't convenient for him to stay on campus. The headmaster opened his mouth. But in the second half of the semester, the pressure from studying will increase. If he doesn't stay on campus, the night self-study session, I'll tutor him personally. Qin Mo's voice didn't change. He won't do too badly. As for the night self-study session, when will it start? I'll send him there and let him come back after class. Since young Master Qin had already said that, he couldn't find anything else to insist on. After all, young Master Qin was considered half a parent. He had even attended the parent-teacher conference previously. The headmaster hung up the phone silently. He couldn't understand why young Master Qin didn't allow student Fu Jiu to stay on campus. He was clearly a student who stayed on campus in the past. Qin Mo hung up the phone as well. He glanced at the youngster who was looking at him and arched a brow. Bo Jiu heard someone mention her name over the phone. Her thin lips curved upwards. She was too handsome. Standing in the middle of the nightclub, there were already many girls who were looking back. Qin Mo took in all the admiring gazes and scoffed in his heart. With such an alluring appearance, of course he couldn't put her in the male dormitory where they lived together. A certain someone was only suitable to stay by his side and watch him. That was indeed the case. However, the youngster seemed to be born for this kind of place. Her entire being blended into the darkness. In order to prevent any negative effects, the Supreme Alliance members had already changed their team uniforms to their private uniforms when they were in the hotel. At this moment, Bojo was wearing a pair of white vintage jeans and a pure black t-shirt with a black hairpin on her head. Not only did she not look feminine, but she gave off an evil vibe. Needless to say, when someone glanced over, the youngster held the wine glass and lifted her lips into a smile. The curve at the corner of her lips pierced straight into the heart. Stay on campus. Even if she hadn't heard the entire conversation, Bojo caught onto the key point. In her current situation, it would be easier for her to conceal herself if she lived in the school. That was because the campus network there could be shared after a skillful connection. Chapter 9-10. With that in mind, the youngster lowered her lids and drank a glass of wine. She was prepared to find a time to have a good chat with a certain director. After all, she was still the one making the decisions on whether to stay on campus or not. Fortunately, this group of people was too eye-catching, all of them were good-looking. Jiang Zhua, who was sitting at the far end, noticed them immediately. It was obvious that Feng Yi and the others didn't inform them beforehand. When he saw the familiar figure sitting behind them, Jiang Zhua casually pulled out a bottle of wine from the ice bucket and strolled over to their card bag. "Why didn't you tell me you were coming?" This sentence was directed at Qin Imo. But he sat on Yao Yao's right. Shui Yao Yao, who had just relaxed, immediately tensed up, even the wine glass in her hand paused for a moment. Fortunately, Jiang Zhua didn't look at her. It seemed like he was just here to greet Almighty Qin. Qin Mo glanced over. Team gathering. What he meant was that it was different from other times, there wasn't much preparation. Jiang Zhua chuckled lightly, the aura of a rich young master. "It seems like you guys won, the next match will be against Xiangnan, MMH." Even though there wasn't much change in his voice, it was obvious that he was different in front of Jiang Zhua compared to others. The two of them were brothers who came from the same courtyard, so they chatted casually. Shui Yao Yao saw that Jiang Zhua didn't have any intention of leaving and her breathing was a little tight. Because of the limited sofa space in the card bag, they were so close that they could smell each other's breath. In addition, his empty hand was placed on her long legs, so intimate. Shui Yao Yao's back stiffened, instinctively avoiding his action. What was he doing? Jiang Zhua's gaze turned towards her, extremely dark, as though he was brewing something. Shui Yao Yao knew what he meant, he was reminding her that time was up. Because it was Thursday. They had agreed on, the day they would go to bed. Shui Yao Yao tightened her grip on the wine bottle. That was the reason why she didn't want to come back. Wasn't it a little amusing? He didn't have any feelings for her, but he wouldn't let her off in this aspect. But he also said that he was doing this to her as a punishment. As for what the punishment was, it was obvious. He hated her. Even now, he still hated her family for ruining his original life. Just as he said, in his eyes, whether it was her or her mother, they flattered his father just for the Jiang family's money. In some aspects, Jiang Zhua wasn't wrong. His mother married Uncle Jiang because she liked him a little, but most of the reason was that the Shui family was inseparable from the Jiang family. As his mother said, Uncle Jiang could send his younger brother to a good middle school, which was very important to his mother. Hence, even though Jiang Zhua wasn't easy to get along with, her mother didn't say anything and tolerated everything. Shui Yao Yao thought it was better this way since it could lessen some of her guilt. But she saw him with another woman just now. She wanted to confirm something because she didn't want to ruin someone's relationship without knowing it. Chapter 9-11. Bojo was still thinking about the dormitory and didn't pay much attention to the interaction between Shui Yao Yao and Jiang Zhua. But when she heard Shui Yao Yao's words, she asked gently, do you need me to go with you? The nightclub isn't safe sometimes. It's fine, I can go alone. Shui Yaoyao smiled, her heart softening as she watched the youngster. Even her eyes were brighter than before. Jiang Zuo's eyes dimmed when he saw this. He didn't say anything, he continued to drink as though he hadn't heard their conversation. He tilted his head back and drank the wine in his hand, turning his leg to let Shui Yaoyao out. After about a minute, he stood up and raised his glass towards Qin Mo. I have a friend over there, you guys can drink first. Qin Mo glanced at Jiang Zuo. He was already aware of some things, but he didn't like to interfere in other people's relationships. Especially since he knew Jiang Zuo well, he only acknowledged with a faint mmh and didn't say anything else. At this moment, Shui Yaoyao was standing at the corridor. She wasn't dressed like the other girls in the nightclub, she was dressed very conservatively. It was just that she, who had lost weight, was especially fair. Her eyes were also a lot bigger. When she tied her hair up, her neck would always look very white and slender from the back. It made people want to know what she looked like from the front. There was a man passing by, dressed rather maturely. When he saw Shui Yaoyao, his eyes lit up. Then, he walked over and lowered his voice. His face was chiseled and tough. Alone? The nightclub wasn't well lit. Shui Yaoyao turned when she heard the voice. The man's gaze deepened. So it's you. Shui Yaoyao didn't recognize the person in front of her, her eyes filled with confusion. You are. I know Boss Feng. The man had a company under him. He was in the network integration business and wasn't unfamiliar with esports. Of course, it wasn't the photos that made him remember Shui Yaoyao. It was her personal story. Shui Yaoyao was just another selling point for a professional esports player's publicity. She was like most ordinary girls, but she had leaped into the limelight of a professional esports player. In addition, she used to be very mellow, and her current appearance was undoubtedly a very good story template. However, at that time, when the man looked at the information, he felt that if all the girls in this world were as hardworking as her, then the results of some things might be different. The man smiled. Originally, he had intended to play around, but now, there was a hint of sincerity. Alright, let's not talk about me. Why are you here alone? The nightclub is not a safe place. Shui Yaoyao wanted to say something. A familiar deep voice came from behind. Boss Ling, you're in a good mood. I didn't know you knew my friend. Shui Yaoyao didn't need to look to know who that voice belonged to. It was probably because she did not keep to the time agreement that the person's voice carried a trace of coldness, as if it was stained with a heavy layer of ice. Director Zhang's friend. The man raised his eyebrows and chuckled. It doesn't look like it. Jiang Zuo had never been like this before. Even though his lips were curved, there wasn't a smile in his eyes. What doesn't seem right? Director Zhang's friends are all. The man paused before continuing. She doesn't seem to belong to that type. Jiang Zuo glanced at Shui Yaoyao, probably because of the distance, his voice became colder. Director Ling, don't you know that some people can't be judged by their appearance? This sentence obviously had another meaning. The man frowned, wanting to speak up for Shui Yaoyao. But Jiang Zuo pulled her over, his left hand holding onto Shui Yaoyao's wrist. There wasn't a hint of awkwardness on his face, instead, he had a warlord's child smile. It was devilish. I have some private matters to discuss with her, please help yourself, Director Ling. Before the man could say anything, Jiang Zuo had already dragged her to the corridor at the side. The nightclub's bodyguards automatically stood out, blocking the entrance. After all, this was Jiang Zuo's place. There were some special places prepared for him. The corridor was paved with red carpet, and at the end was a luxurious private room. That private room was rarely visited, specially provided for Jiang Zhuo to rest. Hence, there weren't many people around, except for a few high-ranking officials and children who came to have fun. Even if they saw Jiang Zhuo dragging someone, they would think it was a beauty. The ambiguous expression on their faces clear. Hey, young Master Jiang seems to have changed his taste today. Who is this for young Master Jiang to bring her here personally? A drunk youngster placed his arm over a girl's shoulder, leaning over to see what Shui Yao Yao looked like. Jiang Zhuo blocked him, looking playful. What's so good about a girl? Go do what you have to do, I have something to do here. What can you do at this hour? The youngster laughed even more happily. All right, I understand. I won't disturb young Master Jiang and this lady, have fun. All right, get lost. Jiang Zhuo was always like this in front of others, his child aura mixed with the aura of a gangster. Shui Yao Yao heard his words and roughly knew what kind of person he thought she was. Hence, she didn't retort. Anyway, no one could see her from where she was standing. It was a day like today. Shui Yao Yao just hoped that no one would recognize her, as long as she didn't embarrass Supreme Alliance. Jiang Zhuo probably didn't want others to know that they were together, otherwise, he wouldn't have ignored her and said those words. Come to think of it, his attitude towards her had never changed. He probably hated her, but at that time, he just felt that there was no need to be calculative with a girl like her, who was a toad trying to eat swan meat. After all, she hadn't shown herself in front of him yet. Later, when the conflict erupted, she understood his hatred. He had told her that the thing he was most unhappy about was that Uncle Jiang had forgotten about his mother. At that time, the two of them were keeping a secret, and he had always told her anything he wanted to say. He even said that he could only say all his unhappiness in front of a ball like her. No one would have expected that her mother would become the woman Uncle Jiang wanted to marry. To him, regardless of whether it was her or her mother, they were probably no different from the gold diggers outside. Ever since that day, the way he looked at her was as cold as ice, as though it could pierce through a person's bones, just like now. After entering the luxurious room, Jiang Zhuo exerted force with his wrist, pressing the person in front of him into the sofa. Then he bent down and lowered his body, his voice ringing in Shui Yao Yao's ears. I really underestimated your ability to recognize people. Why? Now that young Master Fu isn't important to you, you're starting to change him. Shui Yao Yao clenched her fists. This has nothing to do with His Highness Zhou. Looking at Shui Yao Yao's expression, Jiang Zhuo's gaze turned cold. You treasure him so much. Heh, what do you think he would think if he knew what you are like? Shui Yao Yao's gaze met Jiang Zhuo's, and there was no room for resistance. I have always thought that this contract is between the two of us. When we were together, we agreed to keep it a secret. Otherwise, I wouldn't have agreed to the contract. Yes, everything you said is right. Jiang Zhuo sneered, his fingers pinching Shui Yao Yao's chin. He bit down on her lips, his voice cold. But don't forget who begged me to agree to this contract. Shui Yao Yao knew that she had no right to refute his words. If that young Master Fu knew that you have done so much for him, would he be touched, or would he be like me and feel that you were pestering him? Jiang Zhuo's fingers slid down her chin, into her collar. It's a pity that no matter who you pester, you won't pester him to the end. The coldness from her collarbone made Shui Yao Yao shudder. Her fingers tightened naturally, her brows furrowed. Jiang Zhuo didn't like her expression. It was as though she was tolerating something and hadn't really accepted him. His gaze turned even colder. Why? You aren't even willing for me to touch you now. Shui Yao Yao knew that if she wasn't willing, Jiang Zhuo wouldn't take another step forward. Just like now, he had already stopped. Even though his breath still lingered on her lips and nose, at least his hand that was about to cover her had stopped. This gave Shui Yao Yao a chance to talk rationally. I just saw you with a very beautiful person. This was what she wanted to say this time. What was unbelievable was that Jiang's seemed to have recovered a little. His lips curved upwards, his beautiful eyes looking at her. It wasn't clear whether it was playful or sarcastic. Jealous? Only then did Shui Yaoyao realize that he had misunderstood something. She immediately explained, "No, that's not what I meant. What I meant was, just like what we said in the contract, if you have someone you like, tell me and we'll end this relationship. Otherwise, you'll hurt a third person. Plus, if you have someone you like, you'll probably hate doing this with me, right?" For some reason, his side profile suddenly turned cold. "You don't have to remind me about such things. Just like what you said, if I have someone I like, I definitely won't want to touch you again. I will inform you when the time comes." Shui Yaoyao's voice faded, and she smiled as though a huge burden had been lifted off her shoulders. She looked as though she had heaved a sigh of relief. Jiang's didn't seem to have the slightest interest. He retracted his hand and lit a cigarette, holding it between his fingers. "Aren't you a little too self-conscious?" You're tuning into the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.